to the City of Royal Oak Planning Commission meeting. We do have a quorum. Let's call the meeting to order. Before we start off, let's introduce ourselves, starting to my left.
Gary Casada.
Dan Godek.
Charlene Douglas, Mayor Pro Tem.
Mayor Mike Fournier.
Ann Vara.
Tim Twing, Community Development Director.
Jeff Chase.
Eric Klooster.
Thank you. Item B is the approval of minutes for the June 12, 2018 meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Godek. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Ms. Douglas. Is there discussion? Not seeing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved. Next up is item C. This is public comment on non-agenda items. Before us this evening, we have 6 items that are all public hearings. So if you're here for one of those, if you could please wait to speak on that. But if there's somebody here that wants to speak on a non-agenda item, please raise your hand. Okay, not seeing any, we'll close the public comment on non-agenda items, and we're going to move to new business. This is under D. The first item of business is a public hearing, SP 180718, amendment to conditional rezoning plan SP 121023 to modify the medical office building at 3425 Star Road. Mr. Twing.
Planning Commission members may recall that you've seen this a few times in the past. The original conditional rezoning was approved in 2012. It's been amended a few times, most recently for an MRI service space. Because it's a conditional rezoning, what you're doing is approving a specific site plan and uses that go along with it. The reason it's back in front of you is, as you indicated, it's an amendment to take basically the prior approval and convert that back to medical office space. The planning department's contingencies are basically the same under the prior approval. Again, they're simply changing the use of the space. Because it's a conditional rezoning, we've had to bring it back to document that alteration.
Thank you, Mr. Twing. Any questions for Mr. Twing? And not seeing any, is the petitioner here?
Yes, we are.
Welcome.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the Planning Commission. I'm Dennis Cowan with Plunkett Cooney, representing the petitioner. With me is David McKay, who represents Michigan Kidney Consultants. He's also representing the building as well as the tenant, which is the company I just mentioned, and our architect, Freeman Greer. The responsibility of the leadoff batter in an 11-item agenda meeting is to be as brief as possible. So we will just say 3 things. 1, Michigan Kidney Consultants will be the tenant. They will be the last and final tenant, so this building will now be 100% occupied, which I think is quite a testament to the ownership and the various tenants that we have. And also, there are no dimensional changes to this building whatsoever. The building will stay exactly as is, and by taking out the former MRI proposed use, which never did occur, we will actually be adding a couple of parking spaces. There are no parking problems. There have been no complaints from any neighbors that we're aware of. We thank you for your past support, and if you have any questions, we'll be here or answer any questions now.
Thank you. Any questions for the petitioner? No. Okay, not seeing any. If you could just have a seat, we'll open the public hearing.
Sure.
Is there anybody here that would like to approach and speak on this item? Okay, not seeing. We'll close the public hearing and open it up to the commission. Mr. Godek.
I'd like to move the amendment to conditional rezoning site plan SB 12-10-23.
Support. Motion by Mr. Godek, support by Mr. Chase. Any discussion on this motion?
None.
Not seeing any. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes. Congratulations. Okay. Next is public hearing, special land use and site plan, SP 180719, to permit microblading as part of a personal service salon for Megan Murphy Makeup at 28830 34 Woodward Avenue. Mr. Twing.
Just want to, real quick, excuse myself on this one.
Thank you, Mr. Casada.
Very briefly, this location is zone general business. The planning staff administratively approved a professional service salon, Megan Murphy Makeup, in this location. The reason it's in front of you this evening is they wanted to change one of the services providing to as we've indicated in the report, microblading, which by definition is tattooing. Under the zoning ordinance and definition of tattooing at the state level, the city treats a tattoo as an adult-oriented commercial operation. So the addition of that activity requires your approval under a special land use approval. It does not impact the site plan. Again, it's simply the use of the space and the conditions for a special land use approval for that operation. As we indicated in the report, there are a couple of variances that you would have to grant permission for them to seek from the Zoning Board of Appeals in regards to proximity to a church and the residential zoning. So, I guess that's it.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Twing? Ms. Douglas?
If this were to turn into a tattoo parlor, would they have to come back to us for a change in their land use?
Yes, what you'll see in the staff report is that they've submitted a plan of operation for the activities they're undertaking. If you bless the special land use, anything outside of those would have to come back for your further consideration.
Very good, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Twing? Not seeing. Are you the petitioner?
Hi, yes.
Hi.
I wasn't
Your
sure if
name?
I should come up. I'm Megan Murphy.
Okay.
I wasn't sure if I should interject or if you had any questions for me regarding the permit. It's not to have a tattoo parlor, it's just a beauty service that I would add on to what I'm already doing. So, and then a lot of the spas in Birmingham are allowing the makeup artists to do this there. It's kind of like a newer service that the laws really haven't caught up to. So I'd like to be able to offer it there, and I wouldn't change the building or make it any different than it is now.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the petitioner? Okay, now seeing if you have, just have a seat, we'll open up the public hearing. Thank you. Is anyone here in the audience would like to speak on this petition? Okay, not seeing. I'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the commission. Any discussion, more questions, or a motion? Ms. Douglas?
Yeah, I'll move approval of the special land use, directing them to the zoning board for those variances.
Is there support?
Support.
Support by Mr. Klooster. Any discussion? Ms. Douglas?
Yeah, briefly, we approved a microblading operation in our downtown at our last meeting. Oh, no, that one's went straight to the zoning board, right, Mr. Twing?
I believe so, but too many things are going on for me to remember day to day.
At any rate, this is becoming a standard cosmetic practice. We have it operating elsewhere in our city. I've seen the operation. I find nothing alarming about this whatsoever.
Thank you, Ms. Douglas. Any other comments on this motion? Not seeing. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Approved. Congratulations.
Need a site plan though, too.
Oh, I'm sorry about that, Tim. Go ahead. Do you need a?
Just a motion.
Oh, okay. So we need a second motion for the site plan. Mr. Godek.
I'd like to move site plan 180719, is it?
1807, yes. And is there support on the site plan?
Support.
Support by Mr. Chase. Any discussion on the site plan? All right, seeing all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Site plan's approved also. Thank you, Mr. Twing. Okay. Moving on to item 3, this is public hearing also, SP 180720. This is an amendment to a special land use permit and site plan SP 090810 to install a bioretention system along the perimeter of off-street parking lot of mixed-use building at 202 East 3rd Street. Mr. Twing.
As you indicated, this is an amendment to a plan that was originally approved in 2009. The special land use permit and related site plan related to the restaurant establishment that had alcoholic beverages and outdoor dining, that being Lockhart's Barbecue. The petitioner at this point is asking the Planning Commission to consider modification of the related site plan to allow them to install a bioretention system or bioswale along the south property line. It's approximately 2 feet in width and running the majority, if not all, of the south property line of the parking lot at that location. Again, the reason it's in front of you is part of the site, as part of the special land use. Part of your determination under the special land use is whether the use and/or site plan complies with the items listed A through G for special land uses and related site plans. Guess I'll stop there, and if you consider it, I'll touch on the site plan items.
Any questions for Mr. Twing? Do you want to talk about the site plan, or should we bring the petitioner up?
I'll let them do their presentation. And
Okay. Is the petitioner here?
Good evening, everyone. How are you? I'm Pete Webster. I'm part of the ownership of the Shannon Investments, which owns the building, and we're requesting the site plan amendment. As Mr. Twing had identified, this is on the agenda with respect to an amendment of the site plan. The site plan is required for the site only because of the liquor license that's at the Lockhart's building. When Lockhart's had to obtain a special land use permit, part and parcel of that was also obtaining a site plan approval. If there weren't a liquor license, we wouldn't have needed a site plan. You should note that the site plan itself in the operations of Lockhart's does not impact the parking. The parking lot is not used by Lockhart's. It's used by the upstairs office tenant. There's no parking of patrons for Lockhart's on the site, and that the site plan and the operations of Lockhart's doesn't address the parking lot aspect. Though nonetheless, the city has taken the position that to make it a change to the site plan, especially on the southern border there, where the bioswale is proposed, that we need a site plan amendment, and rolling that back up because it's tied to the special land use permit. That's why your special land use criteria is before you. We believe that we meet all of the requirements for the site plan considerations and also the special land use permit considerations. So we ask for your approval of a site plan amendment, which, as you can see outlined on the submission prepared by the Stuckey Valley firm here in Royal Oak, has a bioswale. The bioswale itself is specifically designed and tailored to the green infrastructure report that the city had prepared in March of 2018. It actually comes from the pages 22 through 24 of that report and is modeled on the city parking lot, which is immediately to the west. And so this feature is laid out here is modeled as part of the city's green infrastructure report. And so that we thought it would be a nice improvement for our site, and as we've outlined in our papers that we've submitted, we're doing this on a voluntary basis, and that we believe that it promotes and advances the city's goals of development of green infrastructure, and in a small way protects and advances our environment. The bioswale itself, along with the proposed changes as outlined in our submission for the planter, and if you could, Mr. Twing, if you could just kind of circle the planter, which is that large oval, is there a way you can? Yep, right in there, in that area. So that's a raised planter as well. We will envision, upon approval and installation of the bioswale, will plant the plantings as outlined in the green infrastructure report, which we believe will provide a nice and welcoming spot. We believe they will be substantial. So they're going to be quite, you know, they're not just going to be low-lying. There'll be substantial plantings that we intend to put in there, and it will prevent or it'll prevent noise, it'll promote a green or a calming space in that spot, and we think it'll be value added not only to Lockhart's, but to the office tenants that are on site. And then in addition, I need to address that the bioswale itself will create an appropriate boundary of our property and then the property to the south, and then it'll be very respectful of the differing uses of the neighboring parking lots in an orderly way. The site plan criteria is outlined, and the special land use criteria, we think specifically are met, and I can just quickly address those. And that is, first I'll talk about the special land use permit criteria, because those are more prominently set forth in the planning memorandum. And that, will the bioswale itself be harmonious in accordance with the general objectives or any specific objectives of the master plan? The answer to that is, of course, yes. The green infrastructure, particularly on a voluntary basis here for the city, is a significant item. And that, in addition, with the proposed grass, trees, and shrubs and vegetation that we intend to put in there, it'll be a very welcoming and promoting a nice environment for the downtown. With respect to the parking lots, there's no reduction in our parking spaces. We're actually overparked with respect to there's no parking requirement. The office tenants use that parking space, and so we have more than sufficient parking, and that it fulfills all of the applications with respect to the parking and parking lots as required by the city. That as part of the city memorandum, our plans will actually be reviewed by the engineering department. We'll comply with the engineering requirements and review consistent with the city code and ordinances, and we're happy to do that. In coming up with this plan, we consulted with the Stuckey Vitale architectural firm. We also touched base with the Wade Trim engineering outfit, which actually prepared the green infrastructure report, and so that we have very capable and competent engineering analysis that will go into this. I also wanted to mention that there were some items as part of the planning review. As I look up at the site plan, our work will not be in the city right away, so there will not be a performance bond requirement. But of course, if there were, then we would have to comply with that. That's the city ordinances, and we're happy to do that. And that the site plan itself, we believe, will be very much a benefit to the city. I know that the city has received an email from our neighbor to the south calling out or questioning some of the aspects of the green infrastructure plan. I don't know if I necessarily need to address that. We did that in detail. I'm happy to answer any specific questions, though, with respect to any of our proposal. So with that, I'll stop talking.
Thank you. Any questions for the petitioner? Mr. Casana?
Is this bioswale curbed from end to end?
The bioswale actually has a curb on the southern aspect, and it's currently outlined end-to-end, consistent with the green infrastructure design that was included in the report. On the northern aspect, it would allow for the flow of the surface water into the swale itself. So the curbing is on the south aspect, which is all on, the whole thing's on our property, and it's specific. We've already prepared a survey. I know that was one of the requirements the city had asked for. We have a full survey for the property as well.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Klooster?
It appears as if the existing property to the south is using that drive aisle to access their parking spaces right now. Is there an access easement in place that you are aware of?
There is not. There is no recorded easement, and there is no right for the neighbor to the south to travel over our property.
Do you know the depth of what these proposed parking spaces are going to be in response to this alteration? It's right now they're indicated as existing, but you're also reducing them by 1.5 feet in a couple locations. So,
yeah, if I could address that specifically, that's part of the site plan change is a shift to the north of the approximate same width of the bioswale itself, so it maintains the specific requirements of a parking space. under the city code. And in addition, the parking lanes themselves are of sufficient width. That is, the travel lanes themselves. It is designed specifically to that. We're incurring that additional cost of shifting parking a little bit, and in addition, to make sure everything is smoothed out, if you will, my words, not the architect, that we're incurring the additional cost of making the planter itself a little bit smaller. We're cutting that down and refashioning that to make it all fit.
Okay. Are you proposing to regrade the parking lot to make sure that everything is, make sure that the water is shedding towards the bioswale along the south border?
Right. The initial analysis is that that's not needed, and that if anything were needed, is that would come up that it has not been analyzed or has not come to the view of Wade Trim or the architect, we would need to address that. But as it currently stands, the way it lays out in terms of the topography, there is a very slight, almost ideal flow from north to south into the bioswale. It is, I don't know the exact dimensions, but it's very small. It's less than an inch drop, and so it has a nice sheet flow of the stormwater.
And are there proposals to tie the bioretention into the storm system for overflow per the engineering standards in the green infrastructure report?
Yeah, if that's required, we obviously would have to do that as we develop. This is just a site plan approval. We have not incurred the significant cost that it would take to do that engineering, but as it's required by the city engineering code, we would need to do that. An initial look is that it's likely not needed because the runoff is not that great. But that if it is, then we would have to address and include that as required, as may be required by the engineer. That's a specific condition by the planning department.
Thank you.
Mr. Casano.
Is anybody from Wade Trim or Stuckey here with you?
Yeah, so Ray Trim is not, and Jason McNeilis is, and so I apologize. I know it's important, but that just given the summer elements and the holiday schedule for Mr. McNeilis at the Stuckey Valley firm, he simply is out of town. And that, so I apologize that he's not here. So I recognize that, and I'm sorry, it's just the logistics just couldn't work out. He was out of town on a family holiday. So I don't know what else I can say to that, except for I'm sorry he's not here.
Thanks.
But I am, was able to, if you have questions about it, I was able to obviously talk with him, and I'm happy to answer any particular questions. Both of them are involved, and I've consulted with them.
I have a question. What's the soil type in this location?
So good question. We have not done soil samples to find out what's there or to undertake that effort. And so I would be speculating, but that from prior, I just know from prior construction, like the top part is relatively sandy. So,
Okay.
But I can't speak authoritatively as to the soil type.
Any other questions for the petitioner? Ms. Douglas?
Of course, pedestrians should not cross private property cutting the corner from, say, 4th Street to William Street. And yet, we know that people do. And we want to promote walkability in our downtown. Do you envision, I mean, I can see people tripping on this dark night, snow, rain, whatever. Is your client's liability policy paid up?
The short answer is, of course, yes.
But
and so, let me address that because it perhaps is part of this. Either, you saw reference to this as a potential liability. So one, a couple things. One, in and of itself, these tripping hazards not only are they on my property, they're on the city's property, they're throughout the city, and so. In terms of liability and the like, absolutely, we have a lot invested in the building, and and so it's important that we have that coverage. But importantly as well, as part of the bioswale itself, Our plantings are not going to be ground level. We hope to have some significant plantings to provide visual cues that this is not for pedestrian crossing. And indeed, it's trespassing. And the promotion and the goal of the city is that such walking and walkability is consistent with the master plan, which is part of the grid pattern that's as part of the master plan that the city has adopted, i.e. sidewalks and the like. And so with the installation of this and with the substantial plantings that we intend to put on there, that we believe that that's sufficient. And if there's additional signage that's needed that if the planning department wanted to approve and we say no cut through or no trespassing or no walking, happy to include that. I think it would distract from the aesthetic, but if it's needed from a safety perspective, be more than happy to include that.
I will say typically when we get proposals like this with landscaping elements, we also get a materials plan for it, which was not included here. So it's sort of hard for us to reach a conclusion about the suitability of that visual barrier without having that plan.
Sure. Yeah, and a materials plan or something of that nature, again, I think we wanted to make sure we had site plan approval before we incurred the cost of hiring an arborist or someone to come in and to present that. But I would identify to you, Commissioner, that in the green infrastructure plan, there's already plantings that are included in there, and those are a basis for what we intend to put in. And I think we intend to do that plus. And so to the extent that the city has already adopted and has looked at materials or plantings, trees and shrubs and the like that go into the bioswale, that's our baseline. So I feel comfortable, and I think the Planning Commission should feel comfortable as well as to what we intend to do.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the petitioner? Okay, not seeing, let's open the public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to come and speak to this? Yes. And this is a 3-minute public hearing per person. I just need your name for the record, please.
Jim Razor Law, 201 East 4th. Good evening. Madam Chair, Commissioners. I can't tell you how much I appreciate your service to the community by taking on these cases. I sent a pretty detailed, long-winded lawyer email to all of you. I represent Oak Commercial Properties, the owner of the building at 201 East 4th. As you know, we don't think we like bioswales. We think green things are cool in Royal Oak, but this is cleverly camouflaged. What it is it's spite. Unfortunately, in the last election, there were two sides. One won, one lost. And there was an election law complaint, as you know. There were other political issues. As a result of that, the next day after the election, Mr. Nahat put up a fence. Well, he put up some bollards and some chains. Fortunately, the planning department made him take them down. This is the second attempt to try to subdivide these properties, which have been co-used for over 50 years. We believe that there is, and we have advised the petitioner, and actually I met with the petitioner last week and I talked to Pete, Mr. Webster, about it. I went out to lunch with Mr. Nahat to see if there was some way to do this that would not impact the public and cause a danger, and unfortunately there doesn't appear to be. I can't tell you how bad this proposal is. This is not a bioswale. Bioswales have drainage. So if they overflow, there's not a disgorgement of all the contents into your neighbor's parking lot. You heard them say that the flow of water is from north to south. So anytime this were to overflow, because it's not hooked up to the sewer, everything comes into my parking lot. But more importantly, the substrate in my parking lot is not designed to accept this sort of runoff. And so instead of the thousands of gallons of water and salt and motor oil or whatever that's coming down the parking lot over the surface of my parking lot towards 4th, that stuff is going to go into the ground, and that stuff is going to go underneath my parking lot and into our full basement at Razor Law, which is 20 feet away. There's no engineering studies at all which indicate that that wouldn't be a problem. I'm more worried, though, about the danger to the public. Being as attached to that property as I am and being there a lot, I see many, many people, probably hundreds a week, walking through those lots. And this thing is a real ankle breaker. It's 2 feet deep. It's 2 feet wide. It's not demarked in any way. It doesn't have a fence. And what you're going to have is a lot of claims. Also, it should be stated that when it snows a lot, it's invisible. You can't see it. It's just the wrong place, the wrong time, the wrong plan. I hope that you, well, I know that you folks won't look at it as a serious bioswale proposal. It's ironic and unfortunate that a group that ran on a reduction of parking in the downtown as being our downfall now wants to cheat Razor Law out of 6 spaces, because if this bioswale goes in, there are 6 spaces in our parking lot that we've used for 50 years that we can no longer use.
3 minutes, Mr. Razor.
Thank you. If you want to give me some more time, I'll talk. If you want me to answer any questions, I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, now seeing, we'll close the public hearing and let's bring it back to the commission here for further discussion. Mr. Casada.
I have a question for Mr. Twing. One of the things in the submittals was that if this bioswale were to be put in, there would have to be an additional curb cut on William Street. Is that a correct assessment?
I assume you're referring to the email from Mr. Razor.
Yes.
If he wanted to have access out to Williams, that's correct.
Is it required for fire access or anything like that?
No.
Okay, it would be preferential.
Well, it'd be up to him. It's the depth of his lot is not deep enough to require access around the entire building.
Okay, thanks.
Ms. Douglas.
But to that point, if Mr. Razor wants to put a curb cut there, the city has to allow it, correct?
We would allow him, yes.
So in an area where we're trying to, in a city where we're trying to avoid curb cuts, now we've added another one and taken parking spaces off that street. Second question, is Mr. Webster correct that taking 2 feet out of this 80-foot deep parking lot, and I say that only because it's not really clearly measured here, if taking 2 feet out of that 80-foot deep parking lot, thus reducing the parking space, the depth of the parking spaces and the widths of the lanes, will they still be compliant, Mr. Twing?
Well, that's one of the reasons in the conditions that were proposed under the site plan that we asked for a full survey of the entire site. If you look at the approved site plan, which I believe is already in your packet as well, the drive lanes are slightly larger than 20 feet. They're 20 feet 7. And the parking spaces as approved were each 18 feet in depth. So it's possible they could shift it north, depending on the configuration, but that's one of the reasons we asked for the survey of the site to confirm that it would provide at least a 20-foot aisle on the north, a 20-foot aisle on the south, and still maintain the 18-foot depth for each row of parking.
Yes, Ms. Douglas.
Another question. The question of connecting this to the sewer, they said they had not done an engineering study, and I presume the engineering department does not routinely examine these plans.
They won't review them until you've taken your action on site plan. If you reject this site plan, then they won't proceed any further. If it's approved and you approve the site plan at this body, then they'd be in a position to submit to engineering for paving permits and potentially right-of-way permits if they need to go out into the right-of-way and connect to something. I would agree that normally we don't require someone to provide that engineering up front. They would have to comply. They would have to design it such a way that it would not run onto adjacent property. But that would be determined as part of their engineering review, which would be if you bless it tonight, then they'd have the opportunity to go to engineering. If you turn it down this evening, then they won't go any further.
And then I have a question for Mr. Liss about easements. Is Mr. Webster correct while there may not be a recorded easement here, are there, and I don't even know what the phrasing would be, but easements by common law or something?
Adverse possession.
No, it's not adverse possession, but I'm throwing you a curveball there, so.
Haven't looked into the issue, but there are no recorded easements to other property owners in this area. So they can, the owners can close off their parking lot.
So there isn't another body of law that says that, adjacent parking lots have an implied easement?
Commissioner, there could be such something close to the term that you used. I'm sorry, I'm slipping here. Adverse possession.
Oh.
But it's very difficult to allege. It has to be notorious and open, continuous for 25 years or more, and it has to be adversely affecting the other property owner's interests.
Okay.
And it's a private dispute.
Ah,
It's not, it doesn't go between the government and the property owners.
I see. Okay, thank you.
As well.
Thank you. I'm done.
Mr. Godek?
This is more of a comment than a question, but with how this was presented to us, I'm looking at it as a barrier. There was a bollards and posts with chain, and when that was taken down, this was proposed. So I'm not letting the petitioner kind of confuse me with a bioswale here. I like bioswales, but it doesn't seem to be warranted in this parking lot. There's no flooding in it. The water's handled appropriately now, so I'm just looking at this as whether this particular site needs a fence here or not. That's just my comment for now.
Mr. Klusner?
Mr. Twing, are applicants required to submit landscape plans for site plan approval?
Yes, and generally they do submit one. I'd say that the zoning ordinance isn't currently set up to make recommendations on what's in bioswales. Generally, the ones that have been put into town have gone as part of that, as part of the engineering design. So we didn't really ask them for a landscape plan for the bioswale, and that the materials are somewhat based on the soils and the design. So that would have been the next step. So, but yes, normally we would have a landscape plan that would show what they're depicting on site, but given that this was really a different animal, we didn't ask for any more detail with it.
Mr. Casada?
Okay, well, obviously this is a little bit difficult because you do have the element of a private spat here. But looking at, and I will say this, I'm an attorney, and I know, a lot of things that Mr. Razor presented in his presentation can be brought privately. If there's damage to his parking lot or his basement after giving this notice to his neighbor that if you do this, you're gonna damage their property. If it did damage property, he could bring a lawsuit. So he could handle that privately. However, our charge as planning commissioners includes a look at the surroundings as well. And that's some of the criteria is it harmonious? Will it be improvement in relation to the property in the immediate vicinity of the city as a whole? So we're not limited to the property itself. In fact, we're charged with looking at the impact around it. And when I look at this, it's clear that this is gonna have a negative impact on the southern neighbor because you're blocking all the parking, and there's gonna be an impact there, and there's gonna be an impact on traffic flow as well. So I think that we need to consider that. We don't need to consider what's gonna happen in the lawsuit afterwards. We do have to consider the impact on the southern neighbor.
Thank you, Mr. Casano. So I'm gonna make my comments now. I've been up here for, I don't know, 8 or 9 years now, and for at least the last 5, maybe 6, I've talked about greening up Royal Oak through green infrastructure and innovative stormwater techniques, and I've been talking a lot about that. And aside from a planning commissioner, I have an environmental background, and I think those things are really important to the decisions we make as a city, and as a commission, and as a planning commission. And when I started talking about green infrastructure, many of my fellow commissioners didn't know what that was. And as a matter of fact, Mr. Casada asked specifically if we could have a tutorial on that, which I thought was a great idea. Since then, fast forward to now, we've been educated and we know a lot more and we're learning a lot more, and the commission is learning a lot more, and they're turning us to a direction that I think is a good one for the city. And I love bioswales and rain gardens and innovative stormwater techniques, and I think they're good for the city. And we've never had, to my knowledge, any developer volunteer to put a bioswale in. We've always had to bring it up and ask them to do it. So I thought that was kind of remarkable for this plan, but I think this plan's a bad idea. I think this is a bad idea for this location. I can predict that it'll probably fail. We don't know anything about the soils. We don't know much about how this is going to be maintained. We don't know the plant pellet. We don't know how the snow removal is going to take place. And as a matter of fact, we don't even know if it's going to take off that much stormwater from the parking lot. I think this is a poor placement for a bioswale, and I would really regret that this would be a shining example of the city of Royal Oak if we put a bioswale or approved a bioswale in this location. We have plenty of other examples on 4th Street and Vincetta and downtown, and there are going to be more and more as we grow up as a city and include more development. So I think this is a bad idea. I won't support it if there's a motion made. I don't think this is good for the surrounding area. I agree with Mr. Casada. There are other things we have to take into consideration other than this particular spot, and whether or not it's harmonious with the surrounding area, I think it could be a hazard. And this is a special land use, and we have the responsibility of thoughtfully considering this proposal. And so those are my comments. Mr. Casada.
I'll move to deny the request for amendment for special land use permit 090810.
Motion by Mr. Casada to deny. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Mr. Godek. Any discussion on that motion? Mayor.
Just that, when I look through the criteria here, A through G, you know, I struggle to understand how, you know, this fulfills the criteria, or in some cases, in my opinion, you know, conflicts with this criteria that's presented and what we're supposed to look at. So I think, you know, and I know I'm making my vote based on not all of these criteria from A to G being met.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Douglas, did you ever?
No,
Okay. Any other comments on the motion? Oh, Mr. Godek, I'm sorry.
I agree with the mayor. I picked out the first, actually 4 of the criteria that are not met, and I stopped there.
Any other comments on the motion? Mr. Casada?
Just one last one. There wasn't any authoritative presentation about the benefits of this bioswale. We didn't have the designers. We didn't have the soils report. We didn't have anything like that. So I think the petitioner didn't support their position that this was for the good of the area, the community, and the environment. So I say they didn't support it.
Mr. Casada, good point. Anybody else? Not seeing. All those in favor to deny the motion, aye? Aye. Any opposed? So the motion for special land use is denied, and that means the site plan is denied as well?
Yeah, you don't need
Okay. Great. Thank you. All right, next, this item 4 also is a public hearing. It's a special land use and site plan SP 180721 to establish a community garden with accessory structure for religious institution St. John's Episcopal Church at 26998 Woodward. And I think we have a lot of people with vegetables. Mr. Twing.
I'll acquiesce and let them make their presentation, and then we can get into the,
Okay.
if you like.
Is that okay with the commission? Allow them? Okay, petitioner, please.
My name is Reverend Beth Taylor. I'm the head pastor at St. John's Episcopal Church at 26998 Woodward at 11 Mile. I also reside at 1017 North Altadena in Royal Oaks. I'm a citizen of the city. We're here to request a land use permit for a hoop house for the purpose of growing fresh produce for Open Hands Food Pantry, which is housed on the property of St. John's Episcopal Church. In 1983, a small group of people at St. John's began addressing hunger in our neighborhood. Operating out of a small closet in the church, these folks handed out a few cans of food once a week. Over the years, that little operation has evolved into Open Hands Food Pantry, a 501c3 nonprofit, the largest food pantry in Oakland County, which now serves 14,000 people a year. We do this quietly, without fanfare, respecting the dignity of the people we serve, mostly families with young children, the elderly, and people with disabilities. We are good neighbors. Open Hands is entirely staffed by volunteers. Over 15 congregations, including large ones like Kensington and Genesis, and very small congregations, as well as local schools, small and large businesses, and good-hearted neighbors, hundreds of people volunteer and donate to Open Hands Food Pantry and Garden because they also believe in being good neighbors. Ask any elementary, middle school, or high school teacher in Royal Oak. Ask any Royal Oak police officer, any local service provider, any person who works with the elderly or the disabled in our community, and they will tell you that hunger is real in Royal Oak. And we've been addressing it for 35 years. It is at the core work of our mission. At the corner of 11 Mile and Woodward, we are quite literally at the heart of Royal Oak. 4 years ago, we had this vision to supplement the non-perishable food and the protein that we purchase for Open Hands Food Pantry with fresh produce that we grow in 8 raised beds in the Open Hands garden. We grow lettuce, kale, collards, tomatoes, and fresh herbs. Our volunteer base of gardeners has grown over 4 years. Dozens are scheduled weekly to volunteer, and they are managed by and directed by trained volunteer leaders, the core team. Together, they weed and harvest the vegetables from late June through September. In the last 2 seasons, the industrial engineering students from Oakland University have chosen Open Hands Garden as their signature senior project and have helped us to design and install a water harvesting system and a solar-powered irrigation system using parts and pieces that anyone can buy at a local hardware store. We have rain barrels, we compost, we teach volunteer gardening techniques, sustainability, water conservation, and we give our volunteers the opportunity to help others by giving back through their service. This is what Open Hands looks like. This is what being a good neighbor looks like. We are quite literally at the heart of Royal Oak. And so tonight we come to you with a request. We would like to ask for a land use permit for a hoop house. What is a hoop house? It is not a greenhouse. It is designed so that it takes in sun and it amplifies it. It does not change the topography of the land in any way. A hoop house is easily assembled. It does not require any light source, heat source, sewer source, water source. It is essentially made of galvanized steel pipe or ribbing that is covered by 6 mil plastic. Hoop houses are very low cost, about 1/10 of the cost of a greenhouse. It is a sturdy and sustainable structure. It is completely freestanding, and it is temporary, and by this I mean that it is easily disassembled. It's not like a tent that goes up and down. It's sturdily anchored. Universities and agricultural designers all over the country have done this. It's anchored and sturdy, but it is easily disassembled. The genius of the hoop house is that it does not require any permanent infrastructure. We're not laying any foundations or sinking into any concrete. We would be using time-tested specifications and professionally installed materials to build this structure. We don't anticipate this happening, but let's say in 10 years, our volunteer base disappears. At any point, we could literally take down the hoop house in one day. Rainwater rolls right off of it. There's no need for stormwater drainage. Hundreds and hundreds of these structures are built and are in use in gardens in our region and all over this country. Why do we want to install a hoop house? It will allow us to triple our food production and extend our garden growing season, which is now from June to September, to 10 months out of the year. We are asking for a land use permit to install a hoop house. Royal Oak has an ordinance regarding community gardens, which we have learned a lot about and read in great detail. But our request for a hoop house in a small garden in a nonprofit organization that provides food for a food pantry has never been dealt with before. The recommendations that you receive from the city staff for land use is a matter of interpretation. Our request is a matter of interpretation. You get to decide this, how you will interpret this request. So please consider this. We are not commercial. None of our food is now, nor will it ever be, for sale. We give it to feed hungry people in our community through a very well-established and well-organized volunteer program. We are not big. The ordinance was written to address something that was huge, a garden that filled a block. We are talking about 500 square feet, roughly the equivalent of a 22 by 22 two-car garage. Can you all stand to show the four corners? Wait. Only the people who ask. Okay, so about that size. In an area that already has a thriving garden. We take tremendous care to have an appealing aesthetic look. We add value to the neighborhood and the people's experience of it. When people drive or walk by and see this little 500 square foot hoop house on the corner of 11 Mile and Woodward, we believe that they will say, "Look at Royal Oak." They know I cry all the time. This is a community that has a heart. Please let us do this.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dennis Spatafora. I'm the chairperson for the Open Hands Garden Project. My wife and I have been members at St. John's Episcopal for 15 years, and we currently live in Pleasant Ridge. All of the knowledge and background I bring to the garden is from over 10 years of volunteer activity at Earthworks Urban Farm in downtown Detroit. Earthworks is a ministry of the Capuchin Soup Kitchen. From 2 locations, they serve nearly 2,000 meals per day to a largely food insecure population. Many parallels with what we do at Open Hands. I'll try to give you a visual presentation of what Beth was describing. Marie has some pictures here. And I think some of them are probably in the site plan that was prepared by Krieger Klatt for us pro bono. The picture here on the left is a representation or actual photo of a 17 by 28 foot hoop house that's shown on the site plan that you received. On the right here is the interior. The structure is basically a series of arches or hoops made from the larger diameter pipe that run every 4 feet for the full length of the hoop house. And as I said, this is a 28-foot length, and it can be adjusted in 4-foot increments. The fore and aft structure is the smaller diameter tube, which is designed with wind load, snow load, and any other structural requirements to make it a substantial structure. The source that we're working with is a Midwest company. They are quite familiar with the weather conditions, the prevailing climate that is predominant in this area, and they have designed features into their hoop house to address those very factors. The bottom photo here is looking north from Hendry, And I'm hoping that this gives you an idea that we've gone to pretty great extent to be aesthetically pleasing. And also in the background, you can see the 2 large water containers that are part of our irrigation system. We're currently capable of collecting nearly 600 gallons of water and distributing it through a solar-powered irrigation system. The photos that Beth is showing here are just a couple alternatives. We haven't settled on the exact structure yet based on budget. These are a couple different alternatives, different widths, but basically, again, 4-foot increments. The other thing that is critical to us is our volunteer support. Open Hand Garden is highly dependent on volunteers. Over the course of a garden season, we fill over 150 scheduled volunteer time slots. And these volunteers are led by a rotating core team of approximately 12 trained leaders every Thursday and Saturday throughout the summer season. In the hoop house, we would probably never have more than 5 or 6 people at a time. There's no heat, electricity, plumbing, other than irrigation or open flame. The only thing to monitor would be ventilation, which the volunteers can help us regulate. In other words, we're dealing with almost an entirely passive structure other than solar energy. To reiterate, as Beth said, we're proposing a temporary structure which will be installed by professionals following tried and true specs. We're not a big operation. We're safe. We're responsible. We're a group of surrounding community members and highly dedicated volunteers that have an enormous impact in Royal Oak. I also want to reiterate what Beth said. Feeding hungry people is essential to our mission, and this care of the hungry contributes to the life and well-being of our community. We're promoting goodwill, service, volunteerism, and sustainability, and we're caring for Royal Oak's most vulnerable citizens. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Marie Donegan. I'm a lifelong resident of Royal Oak and a lifelong member of St. John's Episcopal Church. In anticipation of this evening, we went out to educate our neighbors. We gave them an opportunity to give us input. We went door to door. We talked to all the people who were home. We left information at every single door and business we could reach within 300 feet of the property line. We went as far as Maxwell, we went down Hendry, and we went on both sides of Woodward, because 300 feet across the street, of course, is Huntington Woods. We held 2 community meetings and forums. We held 2 congregation-wide meetings. We have the reach of Nextdoor.com, VolunteerMatch.com, Facebook, and Open Hands and St. John's website. We did our homework as we were instructed to do. So in addition to the people who have come in support tonight, we have collected the names of people who have said they are in support of the hoop house. So we received support and encouragement from all kinds of people. Our neighbors stop by when they walk, invite volunteers. As a matter of fact, when they walk their dogs with the kids in strollers, the people who get off the bus, at the bus stop right there at Hendry and 11 Mile, walk through the parking lot all the time and admire what we're doing. The children at our daycare center house on our property visit the garden, and the kids learn how to grow vegetables. Our Sunday school kids at our church learn how to be good servants and volunteers there. We have really, I think you can tell, we have solid and knowledgeable leadership in our church. This is a low-cost, high-impact way to feed thousands of people, to teach gardening and to model sustainability and to be good neighbors.
Thank you.
Last but not least.
Yes, well, all right. Don't often get the last word. Marie. Good evening, my name is Bruce Donegan. I'm the board chair of the Open Hands Food Pantry, and I attend St. John's Episcopal Church, and I reside in Royal Oak. When you come to receive food at Open Hands Food Pantry in the garden, like many food pantries, the bulk of what you'll receive are non-perishable food items: dried pasta, beans, canned foods, and cereal. Through our relationship with Gleaners Food Bank and other suppliers and donors, we generally add some meat and dairy products and bread when we have it. The cost of fresh produce, basil, spinach, lettuce, fresh tomatoes, is out of reach for some of the clients that we have, that we serve. So imagine not being able to make a salad for your family and then at the food pantry receiving fresh, wholesome, nutritious, freshly picked food. Our clients have been so grateful. This garden has been a big hit with our guests. So this was a sample of the non-perishable food a typical family of 3 received yesterday at Open Hands. You've got some cereal and canned goods and what have you. Of course. And this is the fresh produce they received additionally, grown in the Open Hands garden. Currently, we can provide this produce in July, August, and September, 3 months out of the year. With the hoop house, we'd be able to provide fresh produce 10 months out of the year. So on behalf of a couple hundred volunteers at the food pantry and garden and thousands of hungry neighbors, thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the petitioner? Ms. Douglas and then Mr. Godek.
Will you be the arborvitae or arborvitae that you'll be using to screen the south and west sides of the hoop house? So you'll plant those at full size?
We will provide some barrier, and I don't know exactly what it will be, but we've talked about things like seasonal, somebody help me, seasonal plants like sunflowers grow and then peas grow and then other things grow, wheat grows. But if we have to do arborvitae, we'll figure it out.
Because that's what your plan says.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Godek?
I just had a question about the installation. I know you're having it professionally installed, but do you know how they're gonna, my only concern is that it could fly away, how it's gonna be anchored to the ground?
The hoop house itself is a full perimeter steel frame at ground level. They have a patented cross structure that they anchor to the ground. And that, again, is on both sides and in the front corners.
Great, thank you.
So it's a tried and true method.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Casada?
Are you familiar with anybody else who had a hoop house for a number of years that you're familiar with?
There are several in the city of Detroit. I personally was involved in building one at Earthworks, as I mentioned, and that's been probably 7, 8 years so far with no issue.
You say no issue, how is it holding up in terms of the tautness of the plastic, the durability of the plastic?
The plastic is generally replaced every 4 to 5 years because there is some degradation from solar UV, and so far it has been surviving quite well. They do have a greenhouse which is also covered with the same type of plastic. That's been there since the late 90s without any significant issue.
Okay, well, you answered one of my questions, because of course, one of my concerns is it's a highly visible area. Even though you're going to screen it, people are going to see it, everybody driving by, and over time, if it deteriorates or gets ripped or dirty, it may not look good. But you're saying that generally speaking, that's a periodic replacement of the plastic.
It is. Otherwise, it really loses its function. As soon as you open it to the elements, it loses its ability to become a thermal mass.
I got another question for you. How are you going to irrigate it?
Initially, probably just by dragging a hose in, because we don't have an irrigation system yet in that area. Oakland engineers, again, have put in a provision for expanding the system that they've already installed for us, and we will look at that as our potential future irrigation method.
And is that, you're planning on using the hoop house in the cold months?
That's
yes?
correct.
So how are you going to get the water? I'm just, in my mind, I'm curious, because if you lay a hose on the ground in December, it's going to freeze.
Right. It'll be volunteers carrying buckets of water.
And 2 months out of the year.
It's highly volunteer dependent during those months as well. So.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Chase?
I had just one question, similar to Mr. Godek's, and I know it's structurally approved. Does this have to go through like a building permit type review to where the structure is reviewed to comply? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Casada.
So I just want to follow up on that. We two steps here, special land use permit, but then those issues, like complying with the building code, that's in the site plan.
Well,
Those would
compliance with the building code is
contingency
going to
would
be
in site
after
plan.
the fact, but your site plan approval would, one of the conditions would be compliance with the building
Right,
code.
that's what I mean. So we have two votes. We're going to vote on special land use, which it would be, you can do this, and then the site plan would have those conditions that we talked about.
Any other questions for the petitioner? Okay, so before I open the public hearing, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Twing.
Yeah, very briefly, just to walk through it, the staff has had ongoing
Please.
conversations about the community garden here, including what hasn't really been touched on is the planting beds that have been installed. Based on the site plan, all of those that are out in the required setback are to be removed. Some of the comments that come up too were changing their mind down the road. If you approve this special land use and site plan based on a 17 by 20 or 32 foot hoop house, that's what they can build. They can't get bigger than that. And the arborvitaes, as indicated, would have to be installed based on the plan. It's not changed later. So from what's been submitted, the anticipation would be that there would be five planting beds, none in the required setback of 25 feet. The hoop house would be 17 by 32 with, I believe it's roughly 10 feet in height, or about 544 square feet in total. And it would also be set back some 25 feet from the setback line. If you're acceptable with that screening, then that's sufficient, but you would have the ability as the planning commission to require additional or revisions to it. So I just want to be clear that this isn't something the city is going to look at and allow to change next year or the year after.
Thank you, Mr. Twing. Any questions for Mr. Twing?
Yeah,
Mr. Godek? Oh, I'm sorry. And then Mayor?
I guess just this kind of going a little bit out of the line I'm used to. I just didn't know if the petitioner is considering all the conditions that our planning is recommending in terms of the plantings and setbacks and screening.
Oh, they're so excited.
May we ask the petitioner?
Please, yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna go out on a limb here because I'm not a lawyer. We were given a really small time frame to put this together, and we worked on this with a very generous pro bono lawyer. And Marie, if just tell me to stop if I need to stop, because I don't really know what I'm doing here. I've never done this before. We can't tear up those beds. That's 40% of our food. It's been there for 4 years. 4 years. We didn't know about any setback when we put the beds in. We didn't know we were breaking any rule. We've never been cited. Nobody has ever complained, not a neighbor, nobody. We cannot tear up those beds. I believe that the architect, we were working over a holiday weekend, and I believe he said, we'll do this to do this. But we can't tear up the beds. We're asking you to use your discretion and your power to add a 22 by 22 hoop house to what we currently have. If we have to put up arborvitae, I mean, it's a big church, but I mean, we're talking about 200 people, and we are not a rich congregation. We'll have to figure it out, right? We'll figure it out. We'll raise the money. We'll do whatever we have to do. But we didn't know about the arborvitae when he put it in the plan, and I don't want to put the architect in an awkward position because he was doing this out of the generosity of his heart, but it was a holiday weekend and we didn't have time to talk about it. We want people to see the garden. We want people to be sustainable and creative. We want Royal Oak to be innovative, and we want to be part of that. So, okay.
I was just going to add, I passed out those pictures, and so where the 3 planting beds are in the required setback, if you look across the driveway, there are also plants in the required setback. One plant is a lettuce, another plant is an ugly iris, I think. And so I started to take pictures of plants and planting beds in required setbacks around the city. But of course, I quit doing that because every single piece of property in the city has plants in the required setback, and it would paper this entire building, including the ceiling, so I quit doing it. I have some, but everywhere up and down Main Street, in every setback is a sign with a planting bed. There's even places all over the city where there are plants in the right-of-way that are there. Some of them blocking traffic, but that's not my problem. My problem is this planting bed. So I guess we can distinguish between lettuce and daylilies, or lettuce and irises, but the planting beds have been there for 4 years, and we'd like to keep them.
And we won't add anything else beyond what's there, but, to ask us to take it
Ma'am?
out.
You need to come to the microphone if you want to continue speaking.
I'm sorry.
Sorry about that. You just need to pick it up on the television. Mayor.
You have a question from,
I-
I'm
I'm
sorry,
sorry.
Mr. Godek.
I didn't really get my question answered, and I appreciate that. It's just, I'm looking at items 1 through 8 on our recommendations from the planning department, and that was my question to the petitioner, is like, of those, which, please enumerate which ones that are not.
We were going to, I guess, seek a variance on taking out the beds.
Just number 1. Number 2 deals with screening and landscaping. Number 3, compliance with operational standards. Number 4, paving right-of-way.
Because we don't believe any of those are required.
Or
The one he just named.
Oh, which one?
Your site plan thing.
No, the planting beds and the screening.
Yeah.
We request that the planning commission use their discretion to not
Well,
require.
let me clarify something. The Planning
Please.
Commission doesn't have the authority to grant a variance from this requirement. All they have the authority to do is grant you the special land use permit to have a community garden at this location that includes a hoop house and the planting beds.
And
The site plan that was submitted by your architect, and staff looked at it. If you wanted to leave the planting beds in the setback, you should have left them there. So it's been noticed based on what was submitted. And my point was, if you wanted to leave them there, you should have left them there. But my comment to the Planning Commission is, if you want to modify it to leave the site plan, then you could grant permission for them to go to the zoning board and seek a variance from being in the required setback. The required setback along Hendry is 25 feet. There's a specific provision that requires that they can't encroach into that with a community garden. And community gardens have a very clear definition in the ordinance of what's included in a community garden. And if the planning staff didn't treat it as a community garden, this wouldn't be allowed at all. So it's the only provision in the ordinance that lets them even attempt to install this. The zoning ordinance is a permissive ordinance. So in order to do something, it has to allow you to do it. So I just want to be clear that this isn't up to your discretion today to leave those planting beds there. If you want to grant permission for them to go seek that variance, then I would modify item 1 under the site plan that says the existing beds will either be removed or obtain the appropriate variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals. Item 2 under screening and landscaping, if you're happy with the arborvitae, then you don't need to do anything other than approve the plan as submitted. The city will require that those arborvitae's be installed. If they don't want to install them, then they need to take them off the site plan, and you need to approve it with them off the site plan. So item 2 is at your discretion as to what you want to do with it, but if you approve a site plan tonight with certain elements to it, that's what the city's going to enforce. Item 3 just is a catch-all for continue to operate under the community garden standards. And then 5, 6, and 7, and 8 are standard requirements to go to Mr. Godek's point of compliance with the building code, compliance with the sign code in case there's any signage that might be put out, and then any lighting or things like that that might be added at some point as well. So those are standard contingencies that are on all site plans. They may or may not apply.
Thank you, Mr. Twing. I think the mayor was next, and then Ms. Douglas.
Yeah, I think Mr. Twing is getting at the question that I wanted desperately answered is, how do we go about making sure, or at least, you know, in our wisdom, if we want them to have these existing gardens and we want to have flexibility in the screening, what can we do here? What's the purview of this board? And I think if I understood what you said was, at least for the gardens, we can approve and give them permission to go to the ZBA in order to get those setbacks, approve the 25-foot setback to be within that for these gardens. Okay. There's nothing else we can do other than that, right? For the gardens.
That's correct.
For the screening, we could eliminate the requirement to put the arbs in there, and they could, you know, come up with a landscaping feature.
Or leave it blank.
Or leave it blank. If they wanted to put, I guess I'm asking this question because this thing is confusing me. I'm not the smartest person up here, so that's not a surprise, but if they wanted to plant roses there, or grasses, or grow beans, growing beans might be an issue?
Right.
Okay, but the other types of screening wouldn't. And if they wanted to grow beans, could they put that as part of their ZBA application?
I wouldn't really see that flowers as a screening device. Screening is intended to hide or...
Right, but if they wanted to screen it with something that, you know, that would produce some sort of agricultural product, if we approve the special land use to go, no, corn, nothing. Are sunflowers considered food? I eat sunflower seeds.
You digress, man.
I know. Well, what I'm trying to get at is, if we, what is their course if they want to do something there? They can put flowers there if they wanted to. That's not a screen. So if we eliminate that requirement, then they could just leave it open, or they could
Well,
put
they're
a
going to
little
have
flower
to
bed.
propose something.
Yeah.
They're going to have to propose what they want to do. Staff will review it and say whether it's either compliant or not compliant. If it's simply shrubs, and you've said they don't need any screening, we're not going to care. This provision is related, do you want this structure screened from the right-of-way? That's what this provision is related to. Do you want it screened, or do you want a hoop house visible from Henry Boulevard?
Okay.
Ms. Douglas.
I want to revisit this point, to Ms. Donegan's point. If my house is, if the setback in my neighborhood is, you know, 10 feet, in my house, or 25 feet, and my house is 25 feet from the right-of-way, from the, what may or may I not plant in my front yard? Is it, I can't plant vegetables in my front yard?
If it meets the definition of a community garden or others, no.
What, I mean, what makes this a community garden and my front yard just my front yard?
The definitions contained in the ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Casada.
I have a question for the petitioner. You have arborvitae's encircling an area adjacent to where you're going to put the hoop house, correct? Yes. Do you need those arborvitae's there on the south side, or can they be relocated around the hoop house?
No, those are around the, Monami is the daycare center, and that's the Monami playground. So those are there not to hide the playground, because the playground's beautiful, but for the safety of the children.
Is there a fence in there?
Yes.
Well, I guess I'm just wondering about it. It,
Plus, they've been there for, I don't know, 10 years, so you can't really transplant.
okay, I'm not a horticulturist, I don't
Yeah.
know. It's just a thought.
I am.
She is. But I see what you're saying.
Any other questions for the petitioner? Okay, I think it's time that we open the public hearing, but let's talk about some rules first. So there's a lot of passionate people here that probably want to talk about this project. We can appreciate that, and we want to hear from all of you. However, everyone has 3 minutes, and I'm going to ask that you take into consideration of combining comments, or maybe select a couple of people that would like to come up to represent you. You're all welcome to come up individually, but it will make for a very long meeting if we keep hearing the same things over and over again. So with that, are you first?
I am.
I need your name, sir.
My
You have
name is
3
Douglas
minutes.
Dietz. I run Berkeley High School's community garden, the greenhouse at the high school. I teach in 4 other schools, horticulture, where I teach the kids how to grow tomato plants and flowers. I have been supplying different food banks out of the community garden because the high school has got 14 out of the 44 plots in the community garden. Last year, I raised 150 tomato plants that I had given to St. John's to give to their clients, along with 50 green pepper plants. I told them I would supply them with seedlings out of my greenhouse to put into the hoop house to start them. So, like they said, they're the largest Oakland County food bank. I supply them with double plastic bags from the high school. I have them collect them through social study classes, giving back to the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, your name, sir.
Thanks. My name is Dan Martin. I live in Ferndale, Michigan. I'm a Ferndale City Council person and a planning commissioner there. And I've also had the pleasure of being a parishioner of St. John's for the past 13 years. And in that time, it's been my pleasure to watch Open Hands Food Pantry continue to grow and serve a population and represent Royal Oak immaculately. Not just in Royal Oak, but coming out of Ferndale. This is a gem for Southern Oakland County and the entire community. These folks are not urban developers or planners, but they feed people. And this is a tremendous opportunity to continue to feed people in our region. It's an incredibly noble mission and incredibly effective. They are the largest food pantry in Oakland County, and this will expand the capacity to do so immensely with fresh vegetables. This is a social justice issue. It is for Royal Oak. It is for Ferndale and Oakland County. Just because someone is poor does not mean they do not have the right to nutritious food. And this is really a noble effort to expand that capacity and that offering. So I would encourage this body to do what you can do within your purview tonight. Send it to ZBA if you need to get the setback issue settled. You know, coverage is coverage. This is not going to be an ugly facility or facade. I'm interested to see if any of the neighbors are here objecting. I would speculate not, because the church went door to door to make sure it is in alignment. And the whole reason that we have these variances is to address a greater public good. And this is a great public good and an opportunity for Royal Oak to lead. So whatever you can do to move this forward, I'd highly encourage you to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next? Yes, hi.
I'm Leanne Morgan, and I'm a native Royal Oaker. I grew up at Lincoln and Campbell. And I live over on Symes in Royal Oak, and I know about the community garden that everyone's speaking about that was over at the old Lincoln site of the grade school. And it was an eyesore, and it was not, it didn't develop into what they wanted to intend it for. What I do know about the hoop house and our aesthetics at St. John's is that we really care about the city and how we are presented in the city to others that aren't in the city. You know, part of being a church is we want to be welcoming and welcome others into our community. And with this, and with providing food for others in an aesthetic way, I really feel that it would actually booster more people even to say, oh, do you see what they're doing at Royal Oak, at the church at 11 and Woodward? Because that's how they talk about Royal Oak already. Oh, yeah, you're in Royal Oak. You're at the church at 11 and Woodward. And I know that it's, you know, not exactly the plan, and I understand that if we want a different in the plan, we need to come forward with a different plan. But I want to just say that I'm sure that it's going to be aesthetically pleasing and that we are a community that works for the common good. And if there's anything that we need to do, that we can come forward again with a plan to further our efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next? Your name, please.
Good evening. My name is Cynthia Fellner, and I'm a resident of Northwest Livonia, Western Wayne County. I'm a parishioner at St. John's, Royal Oak. I drive past many churches to come to a really innovative place to participate as a garden leader. The last 2 years, I've been president of the congregation. I have over 30 and a half years of law enforcement experience in southeastern Michigan, predominantly Wayne County, Oakland, and Macomb. Hunger is real. Laws, you have policies, you have procedures, and they are guidelines. You have discretion, and discretion is so important for this council, this commission, to use tonight. If we turn our backs on hunger in our community in Royal Oak and in Oakland County, one of the richest counties in this state and country, that's a lot of people that we are doing good to in our community partners. So please, please, I ask you humbly to support this. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, now seeing, we'll close the public hearing, and we will bring it back to this side of the table for any discussion, questions, or a motion. Mr. Godek.
I think this is great, community effort. What's not to like? I'm not in opposition to this in any way. I just want to make it smooth for what we talked about earlier, for them to request a zoning variance for the setback and leave it to their discretion for screening.
Is that a motion, Mr. Godek?
I'd like to make that in the form of a motion.
Okay.
Well, let's keep them separate in the sense of the special land use first.
So
Special land use, you could make a motion to approve and grant permission to go to the zoning board for the necessary variances. And then when we get to the site plan, you can modify 2 of the items to address your question.
Okay, so Mr. Godek,
I'd like to make the motion to approve the special land use with permission to go to the zoning for variances.
is there support?
Support.
Support by Mr. Casada. Any discussion on this? Mayor?
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. I know I met with Reverend Taylor. I met with some others, Dennis. I've had a lot of conversations recently with Ms. Donegan about what you're trying to do. I even came out to your parish, and I was so graciously escorted through what I consider an amazing, professionally run operation that's doing so much good in this community. The merits of what you are trying to do and do on a daily basis are indisputable and are recognized, I think, by this board, the city commission, and your fellow citizens, and certainly the people that you serve on a daily basis. I'm fully supportive of this. It's not the ideal situation that I thought we could work towards, but, you know, there is some interpretation out there. I think, you know, with all respect to our staff, with all respect to your interpretation, it sounds like we're at a point today where this is the path we have to go. It's not the path that I would have dreamed up or wished or used my magic wand to create, but nonetheless, this is what we are faced with today in order to make sure that we can preserve the work that you're doing and help you do the work that you're doing. You know, like I said, I don't want to say I'm disappointed. I got to parse my words very carefully, but you know, I look at the greenhouse or the hoop house, and I think it's, you know, it's no less or no more akin to being a garden cover than it is a greenhouse. You know, so my perspectives are just maybe one person's, but and maybe you share them as well. But we're here today, respecting the rule of law, and you know, hopefully we can do everything we can do to help you do what you do. So at least this one person here is going to be fully supportive of this motion, although I wish there was another way we could do this, but we are where we are today.
Any other discussion? Ms. Douglas?
So we up here don't get to consider good deeds of applicants in our decision-making, and the mayor kind of skirted around that a little bit. And we've gotten in trouble here before because we have to be blind as to the purpose of applicants. But businesses, and this is a business, come to us with special problems that they need to solve and different ways of doing business, and that's why the Planning Commission is here and is allowed some interpretation, because other businesses want to do things that are unique or maybe look a little bit different. And in approaching this, you've gone about it in a business-like way, you've gotten your ducks in order, you've thought about, you've done your research, you've considered all of the conditions that face you there, and I'm happy to treat you like any other well-prepared business trying to modify its business options in a way that suits or fits within the community, and I will support it for those reasons.
I also am going to support this. I don't know that the location is ideal for me, but I can't see on the property where else that you would locate this. You're not in a position to lose parking, so that would be a huge problem. So that's my only angst is the location, but I think through maybe the discussion of the site plan, we can try to solve that problem. So I'll be supporting this as well. Mr. Chase?
Yeah, I'll be supporting it as well. I think it's a good deed. I think it's a good thing to do, and, you know, they did it right. I know some things they weren't aware of, but hopefully we can walk them through and come to the right conclusion.
Mr. Klooster?
Yeah, I'm going to be supporting as well. I struggle with a little bit on the special land use approval, section B, where it asks us to consider whether it will be designed, constructed, operated, and maintained so as to be harmonious and appropriate in appearance with the existing or intended character of the general vicinity. I don't know that a hoop house necessarily is in general character of the vicinity. So I struggle with that a little bit. I think through screening that issue can be addressed appropriately, and the general grounds can still be fitting within the character of the general vicinity. So I will support the special land use as long as we can. I will support the special land use, and I hope through our site plan discussion that we can make sure that that concern is addressed.
Thank you, Mr. Klooster. Any other comments? Okay, not seeing, let's call for the vote. All those in favor of approving the special land use, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? So the special land use has been approved. Now on to the site plan.
Well, very briefly to run through them again. Number one was in regards to the location of the planting beds as part of the community garden. If you, the submitted site plan shows 5, it shows none within the required setback. If you want to allow them to leave the ones that are in the required setback, item number 1, to be consistent with your special land use approval, should be changed to say, the existing planting beds within the required setback of Henry Boulevard shall be removed, or they shall obtain the necessary variances from the Zoning Board of Appeals. Item 2 is in regards to the screening of the hoop house itself. What they've proposed is the arborvitae's with the size and quantity depicted on the site plan. Item 2 lets you have some discretion as to whether that's sufficient or whether you wanted to go the other direction and not require any landscaping, so you can modify that based on your discretion under those sections of the zoning ordinance. So that's where you'd get into either approving the plan as submitted or giving staff direction on how to modify it. The other items are, as I said before, pretty standard for each case.
Mr. Twing, I'm sorry, I'm not able to locate that. What's the height of the arborvitae's? You said it's on the plan, I'm not seeing it.
I believe they're all, it's indicated as, where did I see 6 feet?
I think the code requires 6 feet.
It's in the, yeah, it's in the code.
Oh, it's in the code, okay.
It's in the introductory memo.
And the hoop house is 10 feet?
It's at height, it's proposed at 9 foot 10 inches
Okay.
to the peak.
Questions for Mr. Twing about the site plan? Is there a motion? Ms. Douglas?
Well, not so much, so does does the code specify what screening materials are acceptable, Mr. Twing?
It gives a variety of options. You could go anywhere from plant material to requiring a wall around it. So it varies quite a bit when you get into what's termed as screening. So yes, I mean, it gets in it, but it lets you decide as part of the site plan approval whether what's being proposed is sufficient or whether you want something else, so.
I mean, because arborvitae, full-grown arborvitae, I mean, that's like a ton of money, and I don't think that's what we want here. But I would like to see them, I do think, as Mr. Klooster says, we need screening here, and I'd like them to be able to provide the lowest cost, most reasonably aesthetic-looking option for screening. I'm not sure how we go about that.
Mayor?
Well, one option is to not require the screening, and then, they'll put some stuff up on, you have to trust the word of a congregation. Seems reasonable to me. I'm not sure these are the people that are gonna lie in front of God, but, but that would be, I think though, but it's a serious question, I understand it, and I'm only half kidding. But, for me, when I see the screening, I think, one of the concepts that lies with me, I get it, under any normal operation, we might wanna hide this, but I don't know that this is something that we wanna hide. I think this is something that, in my opinion, the thousands of cars that drive every day down Woodward to show not just the great work of the parish, but, the type of values we aspire to have and that we hold in our heart here in Royal Oak. And to me, I see it almost as in some, I'm going to use the word spiritual way, you guys have inspired me, in an attractive sense. And so, I don't, my opinion, it's just my opinion, but I don't think that the hoop houses are terribly, bad looking. I think that they maintain their property very well. I think they want to have an attractive property because they're proud of the work they do and they're proud of, the home they share together and worship in. And so I understand if this were a business or something like that, there's that temptation to say, yeah, we should screen it. They're still gonna be 4 foot above it. Things 10 foot, they're gonna go up 6. We're gonna see it. We're not really hiding. You get to see the tip of the iceberg, I guess, or half of it. So I don't know, given the cost of it, it seems like a big burden. Given the type of institution it is, what they're driving to do here, I don't feel concerned that they're gonna make it look right and make it, whatever they do, fit into the neighborhood and feel, because that's just the type of, look at the work they've done, reaching out to the neighbors and everything like that. So sure, it's a risk, but I don't think it's, an issue here in this case.
Well, perhaps we could lower the height rather than requiring 6 feet. You could require something shorter. You could require fewer. And
I agree with the mayor. I think building a fortress around this is gonna look bad. I mean, if I'm building a hoop house, and by the way, for my senior project on my undergrad, I did design a hoop house. What a coincidence. Just keeps getting better for the congregation, doesn't it? I mean, I would think that you would want to have something on the outside of this that is attractive, like a rose garden or perennials or something that is inviting. You don't just want plastic that meets turf. It's gonna be ugly, and you wanna deal with your water quality, and who wants to cut grass? So I'd like to leave it up to the I think we should require some landscaping, but I don't think we should require a fortress. I just don't see the benefits of that. Mr.
I
Casada?
have a question for the horticulturist. How, I noticed that the arborvitae that's designed here gets rather close to the existing trees. So although I like arborvitaes, that makes me a little uncomfortable. Can you comment on that? Would it even be wise to put the arborvitae there so close to the trees, or is some sort of shorter landscaping or flowering plant is gonna live better there?
Yes, I agree. I think that, I'm not sure what type of landscaping you guys were thinking about, but, something colorful, roses, something that looks attractive, so plastic doesn't meet turf. And you want to take good care of your trees, too. Anyway, I would be in favor of not requiring the fortress of arborvitaes around it. Plus, they already have a ton of arborvitaes. And just aesthetically, it doesn't meet the eye approval, for me, anyway. That's my comment. Good question, Mr. Casada.
All right. Can I make a comment too?
Yes, please.
Okay, just to pick up on a couple of things we've said, this is an attractive building in the first place at one of the gateway points in Royal Oak. So yes, I assume, and they already keep the place nice. They already have nice arborvitaes, so they already keep the place nice. I also think on the harmonious issue, which is a critical issue because this is a nice neighborhood. It is a gateway, and you're talking about basically a tent. And so there is some concern about that. But I think I think this congregation has certainly shown that the work they do is in fact harmonious. What they're doing is good works. And you're doing that on your site. You're harmonious with your use, which is being a church. And that's part of the neighborhood. So I think I hope you understand that the concern, at least for me, is that over time, this can sort of pass over into something that becomes detrimental because aesthetically the people who may not have an interest in it, because you have to be neighbors too, right? You are being good neighbors, but there's other considerations. So I think that I would make a motion to accept approve this site plan without number 1 and with some landscaping around the hoop house. And it can be undefined, but there should be landscaping around the hoop house.
You said
That's my
without
motion.
number 1. Do you mean the second item,
Yeah,
the screening?
give them permission to go to get the
Oh,
zoning
I
board
see.
to
Okay.
get the setbacks variance. And number 2, there should be some landscaping, but not necessarily 6-foot code compliant with other.
Decorative landscape.
Some decorative landscaping.
Okay, that's a motion by Mr. Casada. Is there support? Mr. Klooster?
I have a question. If we
There's a
just
motion on the floor.
leave
We
it-
need a support. We just need a support.
Oh, support.
Support by Ms. Douglas. Sorry, Mr. Klooster, go ahead.
The clarification on number 2 seems really open-ended, and I find it difficult for us or the planning department to reinforce some landscaping as the guideline. Can we make it any more specific?
Well, I'm reading you do refer things to us in terms of landscaping plans for review and revision. What I'm reading is you don't want a screening of it, you simply want some landscape material around.
Did I say decorative landscaping? Because that's what I meant.
Right.
Okay, so
so we'll
As
just take that
submitted
as-
or decorative landscaping as approved by the planning department.
Yes, that's what I meant.
I heard that. I definitely heard
Ms.
that.
Douglas, do you
What I wrote,
support
so.
that?
Yeah.
Further amendment to the motion? Yes? For decorative landscaping?
Well, the motion belongs to the table, so I agree to other.
Okay. Okay, any other discussion on this motion? Okay, not seeing, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Approved.
All right.
You're welcome. Call me if you need some landscaping help. No, I'm serious, I'll donate 40 hours of my time.
Good luck.
Give me a minute to clear out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what, if that's gonna take a second, I'm going to.
I'll wait for you, Sharon. Yes, yes, go.
Thank you very much.
That made a difference in the size of the.
Yeah. Next, item 5 is another public hearing, special land use and site plan SP 180722 to construct a 3-story, 34-foot mixed-use building with ground-level retail sales and 8 upper-level multiple-family dwelling units at 924 South Main Street, and off-street parking lot at 921 South Center Street. Mr. Twing.
As you indicated, this site does involve 2 different pieces of property with the addresses that you've outlined. Also, as you indicated, the petitioner is proposing to remove or demolish all the existing structures on site and redevelop both parcels as a cohesive piece. They are separated by a public alley that runs north and south. The site is on the northwest corner of Hudson and South Main Street. Both parcels are in the mixed-use district. In that district, the zoning ordinance allows the planning commission to grant a 100% density bonus. Given the lot size, as we've indicated in the report, they'd be entitled to 4 dwelling units. The density bonus would allow them to get to the 8 that are being proposed. In addition, they're proposing 2 retail spaces on the ground floor as submitted. Basically, it's about 2,820 gross square feet that could get split into others or be 1, but based on the plan, it's 2 current tenant spaces being proposed. As you indicated, the height of the building is 34 feet to the roof line. The mixed-use district allows 30 feet to the roof line. So you'd have to grant some discretion for that to occur. From an off-street parking standpoint, as you'll see in the report, dwelling units require 16 units or 16 spaces, 2 per unit. Based on the square footage and the indication is retail, for the retail space, they would add another 11 required spaces for a total of 27. There are 27 parking spaces depicted on the site plan when you look at both sites. However, the ones along the south side of the parcel that is addressed off-center don't meet the specific design requirements for parallel. The ordinance requires them to be 25 feet in length. They're proposing a little around 22. So they would need a variance from the zoning board to allow that dimension of spaces. In addition, vehicle access, there were a couple of items that we've outlined in the report in terms of driveway width. What they're proposing along the east side of the public alley to the parcel that addressed the main is a 6-inch high curb along the south, or along the, the west side of the site from the south north to a point of some 47 feet, and then a driveway opening, and then another 6-foot high curb to separate or identify the entrance to the parking area. That's intended, I believe, to define the driveway as 30 feet, because you'll see the ordinance requires a maximum driveway width of 30 feet. There's also a provision along the public right-of-way that, with a little bit of your discretion at the Planning Commission, is whether or not you want a 30-inch high wall in there rather than a 6-inch curb to meet that requirement. That's also true of the lot off of Center. There is no 30-inch wall proposed along the sidewalk of Center, separating the parking area from the sidewalk. And there is none along the alley portion, although the dumpster enclosure is on the north portion of that site. What else do I want to touch on? The parking along Center is also out in the front yard setback of the properties along Center Street, so it encroaches into the front yard. Those are the elements I'd point out to you as far as consideration under the special land use report.
Mr. Twing, any questions?
Depending on where you want to go with that, I'll go through the site plan.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Twing? Ms. Douglas?
So what I heard you, because at one point you said 6 feet, but I think you meant 6 inches. So there are curbs on the east and west sides of that separate parking lot.
If you can see on, there's a 6-inch curb depicted along this portion, and then a gap of 30 feet, and then another 6-inch curb depicted to the very bottom. That defines this 30-foot opening versus it being the entire length. There is a provision in the ordinance that you could require a 30-inch wall here if you wanted that separation. What they're proposing is 6 inches.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions for Mr. Twing? Do you want to go ahead with anything about the site plan at this point? Or should
No,
we bring
then
up?
let them go.
Okay, is the petitioner here? Hello. Your name, please?
I'm Chester Stempian, architect for the project. And as you know the area, there's a auto repair shop that's been there for many years. But with changing conditions and technology for auto repair, there isn't a very great need for a repair shop to handle vehicles that have passed their prime. The owner decided to serve better the community with a retail building with 2 stories of single-bedroom apartments. So in essence, 8 apartment units, and the main level would be retail. In fact, there is a potential tenant for the main floor at this time if we proceed. The opportunity to buy a parcel of land which has a house on it off Center Street came up, and that opened up the possibility of developing this site as we now see it on our screen. The facility would certainly be something that complements everything else that's going on in Royal Oak. We are trying to make it appealing as you drive up South Main Street. We're using basic products that will last for many years, which include the brick, the glass, cement fiber siding, and we're accenting the building with a natural wood effect, which would provide warmth, texture, and visual appeal of natural wood. And it's also a fiber cement panel, which will not warp or fade or rot. I think it fits well in with what else is going on in the neighborhood. I know from what I've seen and what architects are also doing in that area is similar to what we are doing. We'll have to close that driveway off South Main and continue the program of what was done to enhance the curb appeal along South Main. And I'm sure that there is a need for housing, as it is all throughout Royal Oak, and that's what's happening at this point. So the owner feels that it would be a very successful operation if we're allowed to proceed with it. The only glitch is we were able to get the parking needed, except there is one section of the ordinance that says parallel parking requires 25 feet. We're proposing 22 feet because it's 110 foot long. And typically a car is maybe 16 feet long. That would allow 6 feet between cars. If it's a SUV or Yukon, naturally it could be less, but we do need that extra space to comply with all ordinance requirements. And so if the Planning Commission can't override a request for a ZBA on that, we're requesting permission to go to the ZBA and ask for that extra space.
Thank you. Any questions for the petitioner? Mr. Chase?
Yeah, could you kind of address the items C and D of the need for the density bonus and the need for the maximum building height variance?
Which one? Item 3 or?
Well, it's on here.
4C.
Findings, so it's 4C, the residential density and the building height variances that you will be looking for. So essentially, why do you need so many units and why does your building have to be so high?
Oh, the building height? Well,
You're doing like 12-foot ceilings, 10-foot ceilings?
to make retail more appealing, we would like to get a good height ceiling because that's the feedback we've got from people that we're requesting if they would be interested in renting that space. It's just an aesthetic thing. The residential area would be nice to have higher than 8-foot ceilings. So it's a matter of height issues for retail and the residential aspects. At one point, we would like to go 4 stories, as you might have read, but we couldn't get enough parking that way. And I don't think it's out of line with what I've seen in that immediate area. Buildings are taller than this.
Mr. Klooster?
Do you think the quantity of parking that you've shown is a requirement for success of the business, or is it trying to meet minimum parking requirements in the zoning ordinance?
Well, we have single bed units. We didn't think we would need 27 cars. but the ordinance requires 2 cars per apartment unit, whether it's a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, or 3-bedroom facility, didn't matter. Retail-wise, we feel that we have enough parking, and it's also a condition where people work, the cars are gone during the day, and those spots could be available for retail. So it's a balance of retail and residential.
Okay.
Ms. Douglas and then Mr. Casada.
So in your separate parking lot, along the eastern edge, you've got your dumpster. What is I'm trying to figure out what is the speckled area there, Mr. Twing or petitioner?
Concrete.
So there's the dumpster and then just an open concrete area there that people.
Oh, that's hard surface for the dumpster.
Oh, okay.
You know, asphalt will sink, especially on a hot day like this.
I got it. All right, thank you.
Mr. Casada.
I was just gonna ask a clarification, should have asked it earlier. All, this entire area on Center Street is mixed use?
Yes.
Okay, I know Schneider and Smith has their office in one of these houses right down the street.
Yeah, the map you can see in the report is the first page. Yeah, it's all mixed use.
Any other questions? Mr. Klooster.
Mr. Twing, can you clarify what's triggering the special land use request? Which part of this is triggering the special land use?
Yeah, the sections are listed right on the first page. The zoning provision contained in here, development, mixed use, and mixed use 2, dwelling units above the first floor of a permitted use.
Okay.
Any other questions for the petitioner? Okay, not seeing, then we should open up the public hearing. If you could just have a seat. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to make a comment? Yes. Your name, sir?
First off, thank you for giving me a few moments to talk.
Sure.
My name is Aaron Miller. I am the homeowner at 915 South Center Street, which is directly north of the proposed parking lot. My wife and I bought our home 4 years ago. We raised our 3-year-old daughter who goes to St. Mary's Preschool and our 5-year-old who goes to Northwood. We are supporters of the downtown economic development and frankly are pretty excited about everything going on. We also support the redevelopment of the property at the corner of Main and Hudson. Where we have some pretty deep concerns is with the proposed parking lot. Number one would be the safety of our children. Right now, they're proposing creating thoroughfare from the alley out onto Center Street, which would put cars and traffic about 20 feet from the edge of our property line. Our girls are often outside in the front yard playing and whatnot. Number two, just from an aesthetic standpoint, the whole strip of South Center Street is just homes. So they're proposing taking out a home, leveling it, and just putting a parking lot there in between 2 existing residential homes. So from a visual aesthetic standpoint, it's going to look completely out of place. And then I guess lastly would be from the perspective of property value. Not only my property, but the property to the south would not benefit from having, a house leveled and just having a parking lot there. So those are just our concerns that we have when we're looking at it. Our main concern is the safety of our children. My daughter's room would actually look out into the parking lot right now, and it's not exactly a pleasant experience.
Sir, you said you were at 915?
Yep, they've got it mislabeled. So the property.
Because this says 921, but
Yep,
that's you.
They've labeled both the properties 921.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
No, and I mean I've read through this, and I don't know, reading through the recommendations, it looks like there's 7 points of requirements for the zoning ordinance. And it seems like B, C, and D would not be met, at least for the parking lot site. Which would be well-designed, constructed, operated, maintained, so to be harmonious and appropriate in appearance with the existing or intended character in the general vicinity. So, I mean, from an aesthetic standpoint, that doesn't look like it's going to be met. The hazardous, I mean, this could be my interpretation, but I mean, you're creating traffic directly through into Center Street now. That's 20 feet or a car's length from the edge of my property. My girls play in the front yard all the time. That's something that we have not had to be concerned about in the past, in the 4 years we've been there. And then the point D would be, will be an improvement in relation to property in the immediate vicinity. So to me, to the north and the property to the south, I can't see how a parking lot would be an improvement.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, then we'll close the public hearing and we'll bring it back to the commission. Mr. Casada.
I'll start. First of all, I do want to address the citizen who just talked there. Yeah, that's a little odd to think that there would be a parking lot between the houses. However, it does happen in other places in Royal Oak, and, you know, in the master plan along Woodward, we encouraged that to happen. So when I saw that, I was a little taken aback at first, but I understand the logic of it, especially given the fact that we have this mixed-use issue with the parking. And maybe that's one of the things we need to address in our master plan amendment, is that when you have these mixed-use situations, it takes a lot of parking to allow them to be developed. So that's a concern, but I guess we need to get the petitioner, maybe in a minute, we'll ask him to talk about how he's going to address safety issues. I don't know if you can put a speed bump there or what the screening is on the north side. We should probably talk about that. I do think that's a concern. I love the fact that this property at Hudson and Main Street would be redeveloped. My office is literally right around the corner from this, and this definitely needs redevelopment badly. I like the concept. If we want mixed use developments, well, here is one, and the cost of it would probably be to allow this parking lot on Center Street. So that's my comment.
Mr. Godin.
I kind of hear what the citizen is saying about the parking lot between the two homes, whether it's mixed use or not. I'd rather see the exit of this, I'll call it auxiliary parking lot. I don't know if this is even possible, into the alley and not have it exit onto Center Street. And you have to move the dumpster somewhere onto the, move it over. But I mean, if it's well screened with 6 foot high on either side of it and it didn't have a driveway out onto Center, it would be more palpable for me. Just don't know if that's possible. That's my comment for now.
Ms. Douglas.
It's rare these days that we get rare that we get a mixed-use development, and even more rare it seems that we get one that is not a planned unit development or a contract zoning. They've proposed something that fits with the zoning of this land, and, you know, surface parking is permitted in these zoning districts. So, to a degree, to explain to the gentleman who lives in the neighborhood, our hands are tied. They're pretty much compliant with many of the conditions that we up here frequently waive. So it's kind of hard for us to, well, it's almost impossible for us to say no to what they've proposed. I think Mr. Godek is correct. I'm not inclined to want to close off the opening to Center Street only because I can see cars maneuvering in that parking lot to be a nightmare. There is parking, there's parking right across the street now from the college. Now, it doesn't let out onto Center Street, but you still have that aesthetic issue of a parking lot already occupying this neighborhood. So when a motion comes up, or I might even make a motion, I'm kind of hard pressed to deny much of what they've proposed here.
Thank you, Ms. Douglas. Mr. Casada.
Can the petitioner tell us a little bit more about the screening walls to the north or south of the parking lot? What are you proposing?
I can run through it too if you want.
Sure.
The plan shows the 6-foot screening walls on both ends until you get to a 25-foot setback of Center, and then it drops down to 30 inches. There is no wall depicted along Center Street between the sidewalk and the parking lot. and staff is suggesting that you require one there, at least adjacent to the parking spaces, so they're out of the.
Any other questions? Mr. Casada?
I'm just gonna comment that I know the donut shop right down the street just got their wall knocked down, their parking screening wall knocked down. So I think I agree that we probably need something on Center Street. I wouldn't want to put the walls in the alley. They're just asking to get banged into. So that's a comment.
Ms. Douglas?
But you do have a two-step process again. One is whether you want to approve the special land use with the permission to seek the variances that were outlined. And then you could get through to the site plan and make modifications to that as you saw fit.
And I'm going to move the special land use.
Okay, motion by Ms. Douglas. Is there support on the special land use?
Support.
Support by Mr. Casada. Is there a discussion? Mr. Klooster?
Yes, the special land use is due to the residential being located above the ground floor retail and a mixed-use relationship in the mixed-use district. So that relationship, I believe, is what's triggering this secondary surface parking lot, and I'm going to have to agree with the public comment that a surface parking lot on Center Street is detrimental to the character of that street. And again, I think it's triggered by the zoning ordinance and the minimum parking requirements, which we've talked about several times, that we want to look at that in the master plan, and we've seen parking densities much lower than that in a lot of our mixed use and multifamily developments that have come in front of this planning commission. So I really have a hard time supporting the special land use that is requiring this surface parking on Center Street.
I'm going to agree. I struggle with the parking lot in between two single-family homes. I understand that it's zone mixed use, and I can appreciate Ms. Douglas' comments, and I just don't, I can't support this plan with a parking lot on Center Street. It doesn't seem to fit to me, and I agree with Mr. Klooster.
I would simply point out there's already a parking lot on
Right
Center
across the
Street
street.
where the bank is,
Oh, right.
but that's okay.
Does it bisect two residential properties?
Not between two, but north of one. And
It's
I
on
don't know
It's
that.
already on Center Street, right on the corner there? Is that the one you're talking about, Mr. Twain?
Yep.
Okay.
And again, you can modify the site plan in the sense, as we indicated, you could cut back the size of the parking lot and let them seek a variance to the number of spaces if you wanted to cut it back to the setback. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do to mitigate concerns of that parking lot, in my opinion. You could do as Mr. Godak said and cut off access to Center. There are parking lots that simply are accessed from the alley, and they do have to jockey around to get out. Those spots could also be identified as the residential spots, and so they're there all the time. They're not customers coming to the retail use. So I believe there's a lot of things you could do to mitigate under the special land use that parking lot, if that was your desire.
Mr. Twing, if we were to consider cutting back the parking and only have ingress and egress from the alley, then what kind of application could be done to the balance of the current proposed parking lot from Center Street? Could that be landscaped or kept as grass, or
Oh, you'd have it landscape, it could simply be grass,
And how many feet would we be talking about?
well, it depends on where you wanted to go, but I just threw out the setback line of the house, which would be the,
Oh, the current
25
setback,
feet.
okay,
yeah.
okay.
But could eliminate you effectively, if you did that, you'd eliminate 4 spots.
Okay. 4 plus the 2 on the south? So 6?
I would say you're probably to the porch line where I was going.
1,
So
2,
3,
3.
4.
Oh, then the 3
One
in the north
parallel.
and 1 in the south? Okay. Mr. Casada?
So just to follow up on that, the effect of that would be that they would have to go get a larger variance from the zoning board.
Well, they'd have to get a different variance. The variance they're currently asking for is, the parallel spots are only 22 feet in length. The ordinance requires 25. So they're asking for a dimensional waiver of the parking space design. If you did this to the site plan, they would then also have to obtain a 4-space waiver from the ZBA.
Okay, they could go make
You
that
could
effort.
grant that permission.
Oh, Mr. Klooster?
Are they already needing a variance for the parking in the front setback?
Well, that's your discretionary item for you as part of because it's mixed use, you have the discretion to either allow it to occur in the setback or say it has to have a setback. That's why I say it's your discretion as part of the review is to determine where you're going to allow those spaces. You can let them come all the way out to the right of way, or you can push it back to 10 feet, 25 feet.
Okay.
You're mitigating the concern if it's your concern.
There's a motion on the table. Mr. Godek, go ahead first.
I actually like that suggestion. That would alleviate my concern with a parking lot bisecting 2 single-family residential homes. If this was, if that auxiliary parking, if it lost 4 spots and we granted permission to seek variance with the zoning board, I think that would really clean that problem up for me. I'm assuming that that would be handled in the discussion of the, after special land use when we talk about the site plan?
Yes, it would be part of that. The only caveat would be, I would say, under the special land use is you're granting permission to seek the dimensional as well as the parking waiver.
So
You're granting both under the special land use.
So the current motion that's on the floor does not include that? Okay.
The motion was made as the plan was submitted. Is that correct? Ms. Douglas, you made that
Yes.
motion? Yes.
So,
Okay.
so we have to advise them to seek a variance through the special land use, not through the site plan.
Yes, you're granting permission, you're granting the use and permission to go seek these 2 variances. And then as part of the site plan, you would add it as a contingency to cut off access to center and provide a setback of whatever feet you want. And the parking variance would be based on how far you push them back. If you push them back 10 feet, it's probably a 2-space waiver. If you push them back 25 feet, it's a 4-space waiver. That makes sense.
Mr. Godek?
Would the maker of this motion consider that, or I won't support the motion as is. I'm looking at this modified discussion that we're having here.
Well, the motion belongs to the table now, so.
So we got to.
I mean, if and we don't have to vote on it. I mean, the table, the people here can just say, yeah, it's okay to amend the motion.
I thought that'd have to come from the maker of the motion, that you'd be okay with that?
That you would accept the amendments.
You can make a motion to amend the motion, and then we could vote on that, and then it would go back to the original motion, which we could vote on.
Mr. Casada?
Motion to amend the motion.
Support. To what?
To what?
To amend the motion to include the permission to go seek the variances on quantitative and dimensional parking.
And what about closing off entrance to
That's
this?
part of the site
That
plan.
would be part of, a site plan, okay, okay. Is there support for that?
Support.
So, motion by Mr. Casada, reconsider the motion with amendments and supported by Mr. Godek. Any discussion on that? Yes, Mr. Casada.
Okay, you can't see this stuff because it's in the backyards, but I do want to point out, now that I'm looking at the Google map here, there's actually 1, 2, 3 backyards on the street that are, 4 actually, that are behind the houses that are all parking lots, okay? So you already got a bunch of parking along the street. So all we're doing here is saying, okay, you're gonna have a backyard parking lot, but you're gonna be also where the house used to be. So it's not, to me, that big a difference. And again, that's the price we're paying for getting a mixed-use project here. So that's why I made the motions, why I'm supporting it.
Okay, so, I need a flow chart.
We got a motion to amend.
Motion
You
to
gotta vote
amend.
on it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So the motion to amend has been accepted and approved.
So now we have the original
So
motion
we
with the
have
amendment.
Original motion with the amendment. Ms. Douglas.
What?
Any further discussion?
I did want to add this. Mr. Klooster talked about the conditions by which we can grant a special land use and cited the one that says, item B, will be designed, constructed, so as to be harmonious and appropriate in appearance with the existing or intended character of the general vicinity. This area is designated mixed use. It's a part of the city where I think that's where development is going to go. We're looking at market demand for multifamily, and I think we're going to start to see it in this area. I think part of the master planning process that we're about to enter in on is going to need to definitely include some design guidelines and more specific plans for this area, because I think it has a lot of potential for development. And so I'm more interested in the intended character of this area and not as concerned about the intrusion of parking between 2 houses.
Mayor.
Yeah, I think, is it Mr. Miller? Yeah, I think you brought up a lot of good points, and I'm very empathetic. I have children myself, and, and I think it's been explained a couple times up here. It's a difficult decision and challenge when we have to look at, what the intended use of this area is, and what folks are allowed to do here. But what I do like about this motion is at least it inches us a little bit closer to compromise. I don't know, I'm not the chair here, I can't ask the petitioner to speak, but I'm gonna assume having flexibility on the parking is not a bad thing for the petitioner as well to seek variances, and allow us to find a little bit of balance here, to make that burden in that area work, or at least be eliminated or reduce it in some way where everyone can be happy. So we have a door here, we have an opportunity here to work it further and make sure everybody's happy. So that's why I'm supporting this motion, because it gives us, your representation, gives the neighbors, and it gives the petitioner the opportunity to take one more step to try to tweak some things to make it at least as burdenless as possible.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Godek.
I like this direction that we seem to be taking here. One of the things that we did talk about with the master plan is neighborhood preservation, and I know this is mixed use, and this is where we see commercial and residential intertwine. But I think this is a good way to handle it as far as if I live there, if a setback could be maintained, I'd feel more like I'm still living in a single-family home, whether I'm living next to a parking lot or not. So I do like the direction that we're taking here.
Mr. Klooster.
Yeah, I'll maintain my argument that the intended use down the line is not surface parking fronting on a street. I think the alley access is great. I think when you look at higher density neighborhoods close to downtowns. You have higher density parking in alleys, and you have buildings fronting the street, and that promotes a pedestrian-friendly, walkable neighborhood. I want to clarify that I love the idea of a mixed-use development on this corner. Really, the only difficulty that I have is having surface parking in a mixed-use district fronting on a street. And I can't support something that is a detriment to the intentions of a walkable, pedestrian-friendly neighborhood.
Thank you, Mr. Kinstra. Anyone else? So there's a motion. No further discussion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes. Mr. Twing, on to the site plan.
1 second.
Okay.
Based on your action that was just taken, the first item, zoning board of appeals shall grant all necessary variances, i.e. the minimum parking dimension. It's listed as maximum permitted driveway width, but as I explained, they've narrowed it to 230 feet using 6-inch curbs. If that's acceptable, then that action isn't necessary. What you would add there is the number of parking spaces. What I'll need to know is what setback you would want from the property line on Center in order to designate that. The number 2 is based on the ground level, that the minimum number of parking spots that we've determined at this point is based on all retail uses. So they'd either have to stick within that confines or seek additional variances. Number 3 is in regards to the 30-inch wall along Center Street, as well as the public alleys that we've been talking about. I'll need some clarification in regards to what you, as the Planning Commission, want in regards to those walls. Item 4 are really related to rights-of-way of Main Street. There's a segment there that is not streetscapes, currently a driveway. They'll have to fill that in and with the city's standard streetscape design. They'll have to comply with the installation of storm detention or compliance with storm detention for engineering. The other 5, 6, and 7 are standard contingencies for all site plans. 2 more that you may want to consider based on your action would be the designation of residential parking spaces where you'd want them to see if you want them designated. And 2, a revised landscape plan for the Center Street area.
Thank you, Mr. Twing. Mr. Casano.
Just a question about that revised landscape plan. Is that something we'd have to give you direction on at
What
this
you
hearing?
want there, yeah.
Okay.
Any
As well as
questions?
the wall along there, do you want, I mean, if you push it back, again, for lack of, if you push it back 25 feet, do you want a 6-foot wall facing Center Street, or you just want landscaping? What do you want along that edge?
Mr. Casano.
I want landscaping there. I don't want a wall there. So
that's.
I mean, this is, I'm making a comment now. I don't know if it's appropriate to have a sidewalk coming out there towards Center Street, so people might want to exit or access there. I don't think a wall is appropriate. I'd like to see screening, landscaping.
Is there a motion?
Can I make another comment then?
Please.
The designation of parking, I have to tell you something. When I saw this, I just assumed that the retail patrons would park right next to the building and that the residentials would park away, and that's the way it would be designated, because otherwise you'd be shooting yourself in the foot. I don't know if we have to actually put that in the plan. I would think that only makes sense. I don't know if the petition, we want to get a comment from the petitioner on that, but. Yes.
Daytime, the residential goes to work. That means the parking empty.
Mm-hmm.
At night, the office close, the residential come. They use mixed use, share the parking between the business and the residential. And you cannot tell the residential, don't park here, go park there. It doesn't make sense.
Okay, you don't think it'll work to give them the designated?
It's gonna work either way. They will figure out, like, if the traffic light went off, the people figure out how to go. If we enforce it, we create problem. That's what I believe. And you know the law more than me.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Twing, the petitioner? Is there a
I do have one
Chase.
question and/or comment, and from what I see here, the building, or say the front half for 3/4, is along the sidewalk, right up to the sidewalk line. Is that correct? Where the elevator and the stairway and the glass storefront go down on, no, the south half. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, just out of my own experiences, there appears to be a high voltage power line, which is only separated by 5 feet. And if your building is right on that line, and it's 30 feet tall, you might have a serious issue with DTE in the future. So, I would highly recommend that you look at the distance between that power line and your building. Just my comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chase. Now is there a motion? Mr. Casada?
I'll move to approve the site plan with the contingencies listed, also including the 25-foot setback for the parking lot, no wall on the Center Street side, and I'm not going to say anything about designating the parking. That's the motion. Oh, driveway?
Sidewalk?
Part of landscape.
The driveway exiting onto Center is gone.
Driveway exiting onto Center Street is gone, I forgot that. And the area between the parking lot and Center Street to the west would be landscaped with appropriate screening, which would be whatever the 6-foot screening requirements would be.
No 30-inch
But no
walls in the
wall.
alley.
No 30-inch walls on either alley. Anything else?
That's all I can think
That's it.
Is there a support?
of.
Support by Mr. Godek. Discussion. Not seeing, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, any opposed? Site plan passes. Okay. Next item is item number 6. Is the petitioner here for the zoning ordinance text amendments for food trucks?
That's me. That's
Are
why-
you here?
No, I wanted to know if anybody was here to talk about it.
Oh. You're the petitioner?
Yes.
Okay. It says ask if the petitioner is here. I guess I misunderstood.
No, what, I wanted to know if anybody,
Okay.
what I
You
suggested
want me to
to
ask
you
if
was
there's,
to move it.
if there's anybody here for the public hearing? Is there anybody here to speak on the food truck? Okay, so we can move this to the end?
Move it to the end and
Okay.
deal with the signs.
Ah, gotcha.
I wonder where we were going with that.
Okay. Not even that late. All righty. Then let's go on to other business, item B, which is a sign variance for 180707, request to reface a freestanding sign for automobile filling station, BP at 28992 Woodward Avenue with the following variances. Waive a 6-foot from maximum permitted 16-foot freestanding sign height, and waive a 12 square foot from maximum permitted 67 square foot freestanding sign area, Mr. Twing.
You basically covered the request. On the screen, you can see the proposed refacing. They're proposing on a sign, a freestanding sign that doesn't comply with sign ordinance standards, so the building department rejected the petition, and the petitioner is here to ask you to consider a variance to allow that sign to remain.
Any questions for Mr. Twing? Is the petitioner here?
Yes, that's me.
Hi,
Hi, my name is Derek Greggs. I am with Averson Company. We're the petitioner and the contractor representing Royal Services Enterprises.
Thank you. Is there anything about this that you would like to explain further than our Community Development Director did? Is there any other new information?
Pretty straightforward. We're not looking to change the existing structure of the sign. We're just trying to give it a facelift and give our customer the ability to advertise their prices using LEDs the way that all the other gas stations in Royal Oak do. We're not changing the size of it. We're not trying to make it bigger. We're just trying to modernize the sign and, you know, make it look pretty. Because the sign's been there for quite some time. It could use a little TLC. That's it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions for the petitioner? Is there a motion? Mr. Godek?
I just would like to say something before a motion comes out. We have been pretty consistent along the Woodward corridor with when folks want to clean up the sign to comply. And the distance, the measurement that's giving me heartburn is the 22 feet height, where we've required other people, not gas stations that I recall, but fast food, to bring it down to the maximum permitted height of 16 feet. We're talking additional 6 feet here that on this M1 Boulevard that we've been trying over the years to not allow this kind of height. It's just my comment for right now, see how other people might feel.
Mr. Klooster?
Yeah, I think we've been pretty consistent that when signs, non-conforming signs come in front of us, we ask the petitioner to make their signs conforming. So I don't see anything here that I think changes our position from the consistency that we've been having at these commission meetings.
I think the last one, we just, one of the last ones was Arby's, and they became conforming, so it actually looks pretty good. Mr. Casada?
Yeah, I just want to pick right up on that. A couple of the other signs that we were non-conforming and were too high and too big were Arby's and Burger King. And we asked them to come into conformance. They did, and to my mind, both those signs look better and are equally as effective as they used to be. They just look better. So the 22-foot height is a significant nonconformance. The overall surface is only maybe 12% bigger, but the height is an issue. So I think that if the sign comes into conformance, I think the petitioner or the owner will find that it looks better, and so will we.
Mayor?
Well, I agree that we've made decisions in the past about, with Arby's and Burger King in particular. In my opinion, those signs were really advertisements for the business. I think here, obviously it's a refresh, and I know that's what they were trying to do. But I think that in this particular case, being on the corner here and being a fuel station where they're having to put relevant information on their sign regarding pricing and things of this nature, which is currently what they're doing right now. Not that we're reading the sign to determine it, but I think that given the how the sign is being used, I think the extra 6 feet is acceptable for, the understood standards that gas stations do advertise, pricing, and you need extra space there. I don't know that if it would create a safety hazard or not. If it was smaller and people are looking and, trying to identify it, I think the more people expect. I think every single gas station in town advertises their pricing. So that's where my head's at as far as a willingness to accept this variance.
Mr. Godek? And then Ms. Douglas.
I was prepared to make a motion to deny sign variance SV 180707.
Okay, is there support? Support. Support by Ms. Douglas. Is there discussion? Mr. Godek and then Mayor.
It doesn't meet the guidelines that we have, at least the first four. And I'd like to maintain 4 of the A through H and maintain the consistency of this body to bring signs into compliance.
Mayor?
Yeah, I'll just reiterate my comments. I won't be supporting the motion just because I think nature and use of the sign and the public wanting to see the information on the sign are a little different. I think height has to be part of that.
Ms. Douglas?
And that's as may be, but if we start, I mean, if we change our standards for this gas station sign, we're gonna have to grant variances to every gas station sign. I think that's a slippery slope. I think our ordinance is specific on this. I can't rationalize changing our standards now, given the actions that we've taken up until now in terms of enforcing the terms of our sign ordinance.
Anyone else? Not seeing all those in favor for the motion to deny, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion to deny passes. Okay, next, sign variance 180708, request to install wall signs for medical office Serenity Family Dentistry at 1715 Crooks Road. And Mr. Twing, I'll let you,
Let me wander through it?
yeah,
Okay.
I'll let you do your job.
All right. Let me just pull up the screen for it. All right, what you have in front of you is a request for wall signs. There are 4 variances listed based on the building department's denial. The first is in regards to the wall sign area of the east facade. The second is in regards to the wall sign area for the north facade. The third is to allow a sign to extend beyond the end line of the building, or the provision also says above the roof line, but in this case, it's the vertical wall as it wraps around the sign. And then the fourth one is to allow a prohibited sign, which is signs are not allowed to be painted on the building. In this case, the review in the building department's review of the sign ordinance, they've been, the background area of the sign in this case would be the painted blue area. So that's the area they're looking at, as well as the fact of the white oval wrapping around the corner of the building. So the square footage is exceeding the 10% allowed to a maximum of 100 square feet is being exceeded as indicated on both the east and north facade. And again, obviously the white portion wraps as well as the blue around the corner of the building. And then the blue portion is painted on. So those are the variances the petitioner's requesting.
Mayor?
Yeah, I just have a question. I mean, so we're considering as part of the square footage, the actual blue painted wall?
Yes.
Okay, so if, and I might be naive on this, might be getting kind of late, but let's say they didn't come with any sign proposal and they just painted the wall blue. Would that be an issue?
No.
Okay. And then if they wanted to put a sign on it later, a white dot,
Then
would
it
we
would.
only be considering the,
Oh, you'd be looking at the blue.
as well?
Yeah, the way that the sign ordinance is defined is the way they've interpreted it, continuously interpreted it is that distinct treatment. And this isn't the first one. You've seen several of these, so they're being very consistent on what they're treating as the background area of signs.
So the blue wall is part of the dot sign.
Yes.
If it was just a dot sign, then,
Yeah, if the rest of the brick was brick, you'd have one variance, potentially.
what if they painted the whole building blue?
Then it's not background area.
I have a question. What if they used a different material?
And we can get into what ifs and what ifs and what ifs. This is the request that's in front of you, either grant it or don't. I mean,
maybe I missed a meeting, or maybe I haven't been up here long enough. I don't remember a paint color as a backdrop for a sign. I apologize, I just don't have a memory of that. Mr. Casada?
This reminds me of the American Apparel sign that was a strip.
There's been several, there's been probably 4 or 5 on Woodward where they've got to determine what the background area of the sign is. And they've been very consistent on how they've determined that, so.
Mr. Godek?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, is the petitioner here?
Good evening. First, I'd like to thank you for your
Your
time.
name, sir, first?
So Rob Ansari. I'm the dentist and owner for Serenity Family Dentistry.
Okay.
We're a family-owned small business. Last year, I acquired this practice from Dr. James Hosty, which he served the community for over 20 years. The dental practice has been part of community for over 50 years. Currently, we serve over 2,000 patients and in families in Royal Oak and surrounding areas. And we're also part of multiple charity organizations that we contribute. We hope to serve Royal Oak community for 50 more years. Our main goal is to improve the building and the look and the patient experience. So we really hope you guys really reconsider this. And Frank will talk more about the technical aspect of this. Thanks.
Thank you. Hello.
Hi, I'm Frank with Ideation Signs, Royal Oak.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the petitioners? Okay, no questions for Mr. Twing with petitioners. Is there a motion then?
Oh, I have to,
Oh, please, yeah.
well, we're getting hit with this being considered 2 wall signs when I believe it's the north or the east elevation is kind of the return of the sign. As you can see, I'm not sure why that's a sign. Just because it wraps around the building.
They consider this part that wraps around the building as a part of sign, but we say it's different.
I mean, we don't have a logo on there. There's nothing identifying the building. It's a decorative element, in our opinion. It's a deep return of 15 inches. So that's one thing that we have a variance on. So Royal considers this 2 wall signs versus 1 wall sign.
Well, actually, Royal Oak considers it 1 wall sign on each facade, but.
Oh, yeah.
And a sign is defined as something that's grabbing your attention to bring attention to the facility.
Well, it's defined as
Because
identifying a
we cannot-
building.
Well, we can't read what's on a sign anymore, so we
Yeah,
can't read it.
true.
Doesn't matter whether it says anything or doesn't say anything.
Okay.
The dimensions, anything else you'd like to mention?
Well, no, we're over because the background's considered part of the, even though I think it's incidental, but it's considered part of the wall. I have a question though about the paint. What if we put the sign up and 2 years later he paints the wall as is? Would he have to permit that paint?
You've got an appeal in front of you. The building department has determined that the background area of the sign is the area that's dragging your attention to it. What's in front of you is a blue background with a white circle on it that's intended to draw attention to this particular area. If you want to remove the blue area, then remove the blue area and we'll deal with the white sign.
Or we could paint the whole building blue. I mean,
We really want to be within the city limit or whatever the law is. There's, I know that they mentioned that we exceed the sign, but our sign is, this is our sign. This is just purely for, to lift up the,
Microphone, please.
I mean, the building has been there for over 50 years. It needs a lift, basically, you know. That's what we're trying to do, is just improve the appearance and the curve appeal of that sign. It's mostly, I mean, if we go through that circle, what is our measurement?
Is the sign painted too?
The sign-
Everything's painted?
No, the sign is just comes out of the building by about an inch or inch and a half. No, it's just totally separate.
No,
It's-
are
this-
the
this-
letters
the-
painted on
This,
also?
the sign's dimensional element, the letters are routed out.
Around,
And the copy's very small.
Okay.
So, I mean, driving 25 miles an hour, I mean, it's.
So the only paint on the sign is the blue paint? Everything is, something else is a different material?
The white's aluminum painted, routed out copy,
Ah, okay,
blue brick.
I gotcha, okay.
So you're looking at about 3¼ inch Serenity and then 5-inch D in dentistry, so
Okay.
it's not overbearing
Thank you.
in your face copy height.
Mayor?
Maybe just a comment. I mean, I think that, you know, I mean, by the interpretation from the building, you know, inspector as far as background, I mean, and we can't read signs. I mean, one could even go as far as interpret if you painted an accent wall anywhere in the community that's now a sign because it's grabbing attention because it's a different color, you know?
Well, based on their own testimony, they painted it blue to draw attention to it.
Sure, sure, but I'm just saying in general, anywhere, if any business just decided to paint, you know, a side of their business yellow or whatever, I mean, could interpret that as a sign. But I think that's why, you know, petitioners come in front of us is to, you know, exercise some.
Well, and that's why you have some murals that have come in front of you.
That's right.
That was painted on, so.
Right, and we gotta determine the benefit, does it make sense for the area, and that's why it's in front of us. So it's, you know, our building folks have to follow the rules as according to how they're written, and that's why we have this forum here to talk about, you know, the pros and cons of doing something and making some interpretations, but, okay, that's just the comment I wanted to make for right now.
Mr. Godek and then Mr. Casada.
I don't want to further argue how our building department interprets this. I agree with how we handled it in the past and how we should handle it in the future. And however, what we do have here is discretion, and because this is painted on, it doesn't stick out into the right of way or it doesn't distract attention. I think it's a nice feature. I would support this without any changes as a variance. And I don't think we need to interpret our interpretation by the building department any further. I think it looks good and it fits the neighborhood, and I would support a non-conforming sign at this location as submitted.
Mr. Casada?
I want a clarification. The white circle is actually, there's a relief there from the building. Okay.
Correct, yeah, it's gonna be mounted by angle about 1.5 inches off the building.
All right. Well, I would agree with Mr. Godek. I think it's a creative, clever, good-looking, and you know, efficient sign. It looks great, and I would support a variance.
Mr. Klooster?
Yeah, I'll kind of echo the comments that I don't disagree with the assessment of the building department. I think the blue is part of the sign, but extending it from the sidewalk level to the coping level, it reads as an element of the building, and I don't see this as being detrimental to what they're trying to do as part of wayfinding. The copy is small as discussed, and I think it makes sense in this location and is an attractive interpretation of wayfinding.
Are we at a point we can make a motion here?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the sign variance as submitted in the design that we just saw.
Motion by Mr. Godek to approve the sign variance. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Mr. Casada. Is there discussion? Ms. Douglas?
I'm going to disagree and vote against this motion. Our building department and our planning department spend lots of time parsing the nuances of the sign ordinance. And this is one of those places where it's not as clear cut as others, but I'm going to respect their judgment and their interpretation of the sign ordinance and vote against the motion.
Mayor?
Yeah, I also respect the interpretation of our building department, and I think it's their job not to have, discretion. That's our job. And so while I respect what they have come up with, and I respect the fact that it's in front of us, and I don't disagree, I think I agree with Mr. Klooster and some of his comments, and I'll be supporting the variance.
I'm going to support it too. I think the sign looks cool. I think it's great for the neighborhood, great for the building. I think the building department does a great job in bringing these in front of us, but we have a job to do tonight, and we have the discretion to make those decisions. So I'll be supporting the motion as well. That's the end of the discussion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Motion passes. You've got to sign.
Good luck, guys.
Item number 3, sign variance 180709, request to reface freestanding sign, canopy signs, and fuel pump signs for automobile filling station, Amoco at 28610 Woodward Avenue. Mr. Twain.
The first, let's see, 2 variances are related to the freestanding sign, and their request to keep it. As listed, the maximum height that's allowed is 16 feet, as you know. Based on the indication, this one's slightly taller, a foot and almost 2 inches. The sign area exceeds the maximum allowed as well by 2.5 square feet. So the first A and B are related to the freestanding sign depicted. The rest of the variances are related to the canopy signs and the pump signs. Canopy signs are allowed at maximum of 8 square feet on each facade. As you'll see from C, D, they are exceeding the 8 square feet on the west, south, and should be listed as north as well for the logo one, so there should be another one in there. And then the last 2 are related to, or excuse me, there's the E is related to the logo sign extending above the roof line of the canopy. So you'll see the Amoco extends above the top of the roof line of the structure. And then the last one is related to the pumps. The way the sign ordinance is written, it says that only those signs that are allowed by law can be put on there. So the Amoco sign and the other branding signs are not allowed.
Thank you, Mr. Twing. Any questions? Is petitioner here?
I'm sorry, say that again. I was scrolling through and looking at other things. So the thing that is non-compliant on the pump is the logo.
Yeah, the branding item. And the one at the bottom.
Okay.
The Invigorate plus the Amoco?
Right.
Okay. Got it, thanks.
Petitioner?
My name again, Derek Greggs, Air Sign Company, the contractor and representing Royal Fuels.
My name's John Robinson. My wife and I are the owner of the properties at 28610 Woodward Avenue. I'm also the owner of Royal Gas and Oil. We have been a Royal Oak mainstay, really, since 1928. We've been doing business in the city, one place or another, for over 50 years. Currently, that location, what we're really just asking to do is we've switched over from our private brand, which was Royal Fuels, we were requested, or asked actually, by British Petroleum owns Amoco Oil, and we were asked by British Petroleum if we would like to be the trial case for the Amoco, bringing back the Amoco brand in Michigan. We were very glad to try to do that. One of the issues that we have with it is Amoco does two-tier pricing, and we only do one-tier pricing at Royal Fuels. So the law states in Michigan that if you do two-tier pricing, you have to either post both prices, the cash and the credit price, or you have to post just your highest price. By just posting the highest price, I might as well close the door because I want to be 10 cents above everybody because I would have to post my credit price. That's pretty much what it breaks down to.
Any questions for the petitioner?
I have something to add.
Oh, sure.
Just so you are aware, we are only, my company is only addressing items A and B. The remaining items were contracted out by Oscar Larson. This was made to my attention a few days ago, well after your agenda had already been written up. So I just want you to know that we're only addressing the pylon sign. And in this case, the structure is not changing. We're just trying to reface the sign to comply with, Amoco standards. Again, the sign is, I understand it's non-conforming, but it's not even 14 inches past its the allowed maximum height, and it's 3 square feet, not even 3 square feet over the maximum square footage. So, again, we're just trying to keep the existing structure of the sign and reface appropriately. The canopy, the pumps, these are not being addressed by every sign company.
Okay. Mr. Twing, how do we handle
Can I make
the-
one statement, please? I'm sorry.
Sure.
Just to make sure that we didn't just put that stuff up. O.W. Larson pulled permits to put all that, the pumps in and the signage, and I've been in Royal Oak a long time. I know not to do stuff without getting permission.
Who did he pull permits from?
O.W. Larson.
From the city?
From the city.
Yeah, they did go through the
And
proper
in fact, they showed up, they missed one for the pumps, and when they were putting the pumps in, the city personnel showed up and informed them, and then they said, not a problem. They went right down and took care of it.
After they approved the permits with the signage on it?
Well, if, the application we got was from all of them, as far as the planning division. It was a request to address all of the items in the denial letter from the building department. If they want to stand in front of you and say they only need A and B, then I would suggest you only deal with A and B and deny C, D, and F.
I don't want to say I don't want, I need them all.
Well, then that's not what you're saying.
That's what he's saying, that's not what I'm saying.
Who's the applicant here? You?
We're the contractor, we're technically the applicant.
Then he's speaking. So you want them all?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so he wants them all, just for clarity.
Okay,
But I didn't just put them up. I just want to make sure you understand.
well, the other signs are already up.
Yeah, that's why I was surprised when, because I was made aware by Aver that they were under the understanding that they were required to take care of the canopy and the pumps, and Aver had nothing to do with the installation or the refacing of that, so O.W. Larson took care of that. I'm a firm believer that whoever does the work on the job, they're the ones that pulls the permit, because if something's wrong, they're the one I got to go back to, right?
Any questions for this petitioner?
Well, just for clarity again, they're asking for all the variances based on the submission. The denial letter's in place. I don't know whether they pulled permits at this point. I don't know
Right.
whether the contractor just told him he pulled permits. So deal with the variances that are in front of you.
Okay.
Or you can postpone it a month, and we'll find out and get back to you. Those would be
Pleasure of
my
the
two
commission.
options. I can find out tomorrow whether there were permits issued or weren't.
Ms. Douglas and then Mr. Godek.
Well, what would be the implications of the alternatives? Either they pulled permits, or either somebody pulled permits or somebody didn't.
Well, then maybe they got something that was different than what's in here. I don't know what, if somebody came in and pulled permits, there's generally only one gentleman that looks at them and does them. I don't know why he would have issued them on one hand and denied them on the next. But I can
Right.
find that out. A lot of times contractors just tell the owner they got a permit and they really didn't.
Question.
Mr. Godek, you had your hand up?
If the planning department doesn't have a problem with, I'm happy to move forward with talking about this tonight.
I'm fine with it, and either you grant them or you don't. We'll go with it from there.
I agree. Mr. Casada?
Okay, on the last sign we just saw, I mentioned, I said the height was bothering me. Their variance on the sign size was only about 10%. Here, the sign size variance is only like 3%, and the height is like 6%. I certainly would be in favor. I mean, the difference between that size and the size that's conforming is negligible, so I would be in favor of granting a variance for the pedestal sign that they're asking for. I also am a little perplexed. There are other gas stations in the area that have branding on the pumps, and I know there are. I'm looking at one on my screen, and I know there are others, so I didn't even know that was a requirement, and I would, that they needed a variance for that. I would also be in favor of allowing that to be approved as well. I guess the thing that is most troubling to me is that, do I understand that there's been Amoco branding on the facade of the canopy? Has that already been done?
Yes.
Okay. And I know that's been done on other canopies as well. So quite frankly, I would probably be, what's on there? It's the Amoco logo, right?
It's called the Overland Torch. You have it on 3 different sides, and the east side is left blank because that faces the residential area.
Well, I have to say I would be in favor of that too. I think it's consistent with gas stations.
Two sides?
No, it should be the northwest and south side should be decaled and imaged. The east side is just left blank. That's the side that faces Sunset, the residential side.
The plans we've got show the south and north side as having the Amoco logo. The west side is having the text as Amoco.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, you're right. I'm just, it does, the west side doesn't have the Overland Torch on it. You're correct. It says the text.
Mr. Godek?
I agree with Mr. Casada on part of what he said. The pedestal monument, the freestanding sign is not growing in size, but it does have an electronic message board that has not been in compliance either. It's, even in the picture right now, it says "and wine" in it. And one of the things you can't do is have a message that is 2-part in a electronic sign. It can't be scrolling, it can't change more than a certain period of time, and the message has to be contained all within one of the times that the sign is on. So I've made it clear that electronic signs are problematic. It's not enforced, and that's why I won't be supporting that particular sign. If it's going to have an electronic sign, you're going to comply. The rest of the items on there, I don't particularly have a problem. I'm not sure I fully understand the canopy size variance. It seems kind of large, that we permit 8 feet and they're looking for 18 feet. So I guess that's the overall size of the canopy, not the size of the logo or lettering that's going on it. So those are my comments for now.
Mr. Klooster?
Yeah, I will echo the comments regarding the freestanding sign. I think parts A and B of the variance are negligible in their differentiation from a compliant sign. I also agree with that part F of the sign variance. I think it's commonplace for the pumps to have some sort of identity, whether it's coloring or logo, etc. I don't think that's atypical, and I don't find it to be detrimental to the kind of traffic and the concerns that we have regarding signs. C, D, and E, I can't support. We've been consistent in not allowing prohibited sign types. So the sign types that extend above the canopy, I can't support, and these are large area differences from a compliant sign. So C, D, and E I cannot support.
You may want to break this into 2 motions or more.
Ms. Douglas?
Mr. Twing, tell me again, what makes the canopy signs so out of compliance? 16.29 versus 8. Is it the color?
No, the size of it.
So it's really that big, huh?
Maximum area permitted are 8 square feet. They're proposing 24.29 and 30.38, depending on which one you're looking at. So the variance listed is the difference.
Right,
They're already installed.
right.
It's okay if they're
Didn't look that
denied,
big.
if you deny them and there's no permit issued, order them down.
Yeah. Ms. Douglas?
Are we done with the petitioner?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm going to start out by moving to grant the variances for items A and B, the 2 elements for the freestanding sign.
Okay, there's a motion to grant A and B. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Mr. Klooster. Any discussion on this motion? Mr. Godek?
I just won't be supporting it for the reason I said that there's a electronic message board as part of this that's been consistently out of compliance with our zoning ordinance, and if you want to maintain that electronic message board, I've been consistent with making the rest of the sign comply.
Can I say something in response to that?
Oh, no, we have a motion on the floor. I have a question for Mr. Twing. Shouldn't the electronic message have been a part of this sign variance?
I believe they're allowed on Woodward Avenue.
They are, okay. I'm sorry, thank you. Okay, any other comments on this motion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Okay, motion passes 6-1 to approve A and B. Now we're looking at C, D, and E, and F. Is there another motion? Mr. Casada?
I'm going to move to allow the sign variance for F on the fuel pumps.
Okay, there's a motion to allow F, signage on the fuel pumps. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Mr. Klooster. Any discussion on this motion to allow F? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion to allow F has passed. Is there any other motion to address C, D, and E?
Motion to deny C, D, and E.
Motion by Mr. Klooster to deny C, D, and E. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Mr. Godek. Is there discussion on this motion to deny C, D, and E? Mr. Casada?
Okay, do I have it correct that what the petitioner has represented to us is that they got permits for these?
That's what he said.
That's what he said, but we don't know that one way or the other as we're
I
sitting
don't know
here.
that. Based on the letters I have, they denied them, so. I'll find out tomorrow.
And if they did get the permits, would they be able to resubmit?
I'll find out why. I'll deal with it if they did.
All right.
So there's a motion to deny CD&E by Mr. Klooster, supported by Mr. Godek. Any other discussion? Calling for the vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Motion passes to deny CD&E.
6-1.
6-1. Okay. Thank you.
Can I have a question? I have one small question. I'm going to be extremely surprised if O.W. Larson didn't follow the rules. They've been around almost as long as my company has, and they've done a lot of work in Royal Oak. If it turns out that we did follow everything correctly, do I have to come back here and redo this to get those approved, or?
We'll deal with it tomorrow when I find out what went on.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Okay, moving on to sign variance 180710. Request to reface the freestanding sign, canopy signs, and fuel pump sign for automobile filling station Sunoco at 1808 Crooks Road. Mr. Twing. I hear ya.
All right, we've got several different ones. One relates to the freestanding sign is considered a non-conforming sign. It's 1 foot too high, 16 feet versus is the maximum allowed versus 1. Then there are several related to the canopy signs. Pull those up. Basically, there's 2 canopies on site. In your packet, they're listed as canopy 1 and canopy 2. The signs are basically the same in sign area as proposed. Again, the maximum allowed is 8 square feet. The variance listed is the difference between what's being proposed and the 8 square feet. So you'll see that B is in regards to one of the canopy signs, and then which is the one with the Sunoco text on it. C is in regards to the labeling official fuel NASCAR, that provision, and that's true of D and E, and they're just related to the 2 different canopies as far as which one they're on. Then also you have F, which is the pump signs, again, similar to the last case.
Thank you, Mr. Twain. Mayor?
Yeah, just a quick question. Is it, and it's getting late, but is what's driving the square footage here the, I don't want to say rainbow activity because it's not really a complete rainbow.
Swoosh?
The swoosh, the checkered sign, so more of the graphic, I take it, right?
Right.
I mean, that's not the, yeah, okay.
That'd be my read based on the numbers they used.
I don't know that it is, because it's only 11 square feet over.
Yeah, they're going 22 feet by 13 and 21 by, 22 inches by 13 feet 3 inches. So that's what they're measuring as far as the NASCAR sign.
Is that the 11 square feet, the NASCAR stuff?
Yeah, the little, I'm looking at like B, weigh 47.28 square feet from the 8 square feet of the canopy.
It would be
sign.
in your packet if you go to the denial letter. It's probably easier for you to.
Okay.
Breaks it down. Yeah.
Oh, there we go, the NASCAR.
So you can see the
Okay.
canopy, gas canopy number 1, 8 square feet's the maximum allowed, and you can see that the NASCAR graphics, how they're measuring it. And then you can see on the Sunoco graphic how they're measuring it. And it's the difference.
Yeah.
Okay, petitioner. Back up.
Again, pretty straightforward. In regards to the pylon sign, well, actually, all the structures mentioned, we're not changing the size or anything to any of them. With the sign itself, there is no changes other than we're just trying to reface and update the sign. I think the site was branded to Sunoco back in 2010, and many of the things that are there are still there, including the canopy. So again, we've got old graphics here that we just want to facelift, especially in regards to the canopy, because, you know, if you've seen it recently, the vinyl graphics on there, they're peeling, they don't look very good, and they definitely need, you know, a new image. So we're trying to maintain the same image that's there now, just make it look a lot better than what it is. And the same deal with the pumps as well.
Thank you. Any questions for the petitioner? Okay, back to this side of the table for a motion? Motions? Mr. Godek.
Make a motion to approve the freestanding sign variance.
Is that A?
Yes,
So just A?
just A. Well, let me include A and F.
Okay. Motion to approve A and F by Mr. Godek. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Mr. Casada? Is there a discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion to approve A and F moves forward. Are we addressing B, C, D, and E tonight? We need to do something with them, right, Mr. Twing?
I hope so.
Okay, so is there a motion?
Motion to deny B, C, D, and E.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Klooster, support by Mr. Godek to deny B, C, D, and E. Is there a discussion on this motion? Mr. Casada.
Okay, the denial is based on the size, not the fact that they're on the facade, right? That's all we're saying is that you should make them smaller, and in the case of Sunoco, they could comply by making it smaller. In the case of the NASCAR, they'd have to probably get rid of the super graphic there.
Yeah, they could make it smaller. I don't know if that would look good, but yeah, they'd have to adjust it.
If you end up removing that, that would be the case.
Who supported that?
E.
Mr. Godek. Any other discussion on this? Mr. Casada?
I'm not gonna, I would like to leave the super graphic on there. So I don't know how we're parsing that out. So I'm not gonna support the motion as presented. I think the super graphic makes sense like that. To tell you the truth, the size of the Sunoco balances with the size of the super graphic. So I really don't have a problem with that either. So I'm not gonna support, the motion is to deny, I'm not gonna support it.
Okay, there's a motion to deny B, C, D, and E by Mr. Klooster, supported by Mr. Godek. Any other discussion? All those in,
I was just going to say, we're trying to be consistent here. It didn't happen but 2 minutes ago to look at these canopies as problematic, to get them to comply to the size.
I'm gonna agree with Mr. Casada. I'm gonna not support this motion because the graphics are on the canopy. For clarification, I was a part of the denial for the last Amico because they were hovering above and below, and they were way oversized, so that's why I'll be voting against this motion. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against? No.
Nay.
1,
Failed.
2, 3, 4. Motion failed. Okay.
That was Gary, okay.
The mayor, Mr. Chase, Mr. Casada, and myself. Okay, so is there a new motion? Mr. Casada.
I'll move to approve the variance for B, C, D, and E.
Motion to approve B, C, and D, B, C, D, and E. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Mr. Chase. Any discussion on this motion? Not seeing, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No?
No.
So 4-3. We got 3 noes, Mr. Godek, Ms. Douglas, and Mr. Klooster. Okay, motion passes. This is approved. Okay. Congratulations on one gas station.
1 out of 3.
Okay. Last sign variance, SV 180711. This is a request to install wall signs for a financial institution, Adiva Credit Union, at 27100 Woodward Avenue, with a variance to allow prohibited sign type. Wall signs extending beyond roof of building. Mr. Twain.
That was simply the requirement. If you look at the proposed location of the sign, it does extend above the roof line as defined up onto the parapet wall that is above the roof line. You can see it depicted in yellow is the roof line and the sign's above it. So it's a permitted or a prohibited type sign, and that's what was denied by the building department.
Thank you, Mr. Twain. Is the petitioner here?
On the round. Give him points for that.
Your name, sir?
Good evening. My name's Colin Sternberg. I'm with Sign Art from Kalamazoo here on behalf of ADVIA, seeking relief for the definition of what constitutes a roof sign.
Okay. Any questions for the petitioner? Is this, could you tell us about the sign? Is it like a placard, or is it?
It's an internally illuminated sign cabinet,
Okay,
kind of similar to the circular one earlier where the letters are routed out and then is backed with the polycarbonate.
okay. So the sign is purple, and the white color that we're seeing, that's the illumination?
Yeah, that's what will be illuminated in the
Okay.
evening.
I have a
Mr. Chase?
question or clarification. I see one ADVIA sign over, which is probably your space, then another space, and then there's another sign around the corner on the building or the parcel that's not your space. Is that?
That's all ADVIA.
The whole, you have the whole, both
That both
retail
frontages.
parcels, it looks like?
Yeah, I apologize, those photos are before the siding and everything was up, but the space does wrap around, and I think there is plans for a drive-through or ATM on the back side.
But that is all one tenant?
Yes. Which it is now complete with like the fiber cement type siding, and aluminum. More contemporary look, I guess it's pretty popular to have the raised parapet in a lot of this modern construction for the commercial buildings, and this is kind of where we're running into the problem with, about half the sign is setting above the old roof line, to where I believe they had an old kind of wood mansard roof prior to the remodel.
How far above the roof line is the sign?
The sign
A
itself,
foot?
it's a couple feet.
Okay,
Well, the sign's
There's two
5
different
foot 4
size
inches,
signs,
and it's
yeah.
about halfway up. So.
halfway up, okay. I'm trying to, it's so tiny, I can't see that.
Yeah, maybe if this shows it's 5 foot 4 inches.
So half of that is over.
About half of it's above the roof
Okay.
line.
Mr. Klooster?
I just want to clarify that none of the sign is proposed to be above the top of the parapet.
Yeah, correct.
Mr. Casada?
I'd like a comment from Mr. Twing. The ordinance is written, does it contemplate the parapets? I noticed that the quote here doesn't say parapet in it. And I'm just curious, is there a structural basis for having this ordinance written the way it is? Or is it aesthetic, or what's the basis of this as applied to a parapet situation?
Basing it on not being above the roof line?
Yeah.
So that you don't get fake parapet walls that solely go up for the purpose of putting up a higher sign.
Well, does this sign comply size-wise?
Yes.
Okay, so the size of the sign isn't the issue.
Yeah, otherwise it'd be listed too, I mean.
Right, I mean, if somebody made a 20-foot parapet and gave us a 20-foot sign, we'd have to give them the variance for the 20-foot sign, which would be an issue probably. But this sign is, square footage-wise, is compliant.
Yeah, if they moved it down, it wasn't above the roof line, I believe they'd issued permits. Otherwise, it'd be listed.
Well,
I didn't calculate it, but
okay.
they get 10% of the facade up to 100 square feet. So it appears to be under that standard.
Okay. Just make a comment to follow up. My comment is that proportionally, the sign is appropriate. And to my way of thinking, unless our architect disagrees about this, I don't see any structural safety problem with it. I don't think that the petitioner made the parapet to make a bigger sign because the sign complies. So I'm going to support the variance here. I think it looks appropriate. That's my position.
Is that a motion, Mr. Casada?
I move to accept the variance, grant the variance.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Casada, support by Mr. Godit to grant the variance. Any discussion? Not seeing all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Congratulations. Okay, now we're going back to number 6 under new business, which is a public hearing. There's no public here. This is a zoning ordinance, text amendments for food trucks. Mr. Twing?
Staff was asked to put together some provisions to specifically address food trucks, in particular, separate from how we currently treat them. Food trucks are currently treated as transient merchants. Anything that's seasonal, anything that's temporary, fall under the transient merchant provisions. There are existing transient merchants provisions that in the neighborhood business 2, and general business. They're generally treated as a special land use, and they're required to come in with a site plan and get site plan approval and special land use approval. And then after that, they would have an annual license that's issued through the city clerk's office that shows they continue to comply with that approved site plan. So the planning commission would see a transient merchant on a piece of property, say once in those areas. If someone proposed a food truck previously in those zoning districts, we would, as I said, treat them as a transient merchant and run them through that process. In the central business district, they're not allowed. Transient merchants are not allowed. No, none of those are allowed. Everything is required to be within an enclosed building and operated as such. As I said, we were asked to look at revising the provisions to address food trucks in particular the central business district area. And in order to do that, we felt we also needed to address food trucks as a separate item, separate from transient merchants, that still go through the same technical procedures but define them differently. So we've added the definition of a food truck versus a temporary transit outdoor sales and made a distinction there because then we're going to treat them differently, particularly when it came to the CBD. So you'll see several sections in here that reference the other zoning districts besides the definitions to clarify food trucks and to also come with common wording for temporary or transit outdoor sales. So those are parts of the revisions that are put in front of you this evening for discussion. In addition, on page 5 of 7, under section 77-4, there's a provision that would add food trucks to the central business district as an accessory use to establishments with liquor licenses but without kitchen facilities when located on private property, their principal use and subject to the requirements set forth in temporary and transit as defined. So that's a use that's different than what I've talked about. Another, that use is potentially being added as a special land use if the Planning Commission so felt. The rest were clarifications and wording changes in the prior. The same with filling stations. And again, most of the other provisions until you get to item G under section 7769 were again clarifications and describing temporary, transient, and outdoor sales and food trucks because we were treating them differently. The big provision under G was adding the Planning Commission some discretion for food trucks and transient merchants. And then item H dealt with food trucks in particular. You'll see there are 10 specific conditions or standards that staff drafted in its review of potentially allowing food trucks. I'll walk through them briefly. Basically that they would occur solely on private property is item 1, and that they'd be on a hard surface pavement, and they're prohibited specifically from the public right-of-way. Second, the food truck item would potentially be able to have seating and tables, but maintain some minimum distances from things in terms of the placement of those tables or chairs. 3 was food trucks would not occupy required off-street parking spaces. I would add as part of that, most transient merchants, including food trucks, if they're outside the CBD, would have to add parking for their size of their trailer or truck, and or if they had outside seating, they would have to add that. So like if they wanted to go in Myers parking lot, but they wanted to take up a landscape area, we would do a parking calculation based on what they're adding to the demand. In the CBD, there is no parking requirement, so they wouldn't add to any parking requirement. Hours of operation of the food truck would be based on the Planning Commission's, this is number 4, based on the Planning Commission's review and determination under the special land use provisions. 5 is dealing with trash and trash receptacles and refuge. 6 is dealing with the disposal of various waste items and grease and things and how it can and not occur. 7 is dealing with electrical hookups and temporary service and generators. 8 is indicating they cannot permanently connect to water or sewer. 9 is, again, because we were talking about establishments with liquor licenses in the CBD that didn't have kitchens. 9 is related to the idea that the plan of operation for the liquor license would have to be amended by the City Commission to allow the food truck as an accessory use. And 10 is obtaining the appropriate licenses. And in here I would add wording appropriate licenses from the City of Royal Oak and with Oakland County in the state of Michigan. So that's an overview of what staff drafted it based on a request.
Do you need looking for some action from us? So
Well, we did schedule it for a public hearing.
Oh, I should open the public hearing.
Well, if there's questions, I'll address them and you could
Okay,
open a public
yes, I'm
hearing.
sorry, Ms. Douglas.
He was first.
Mr. Casada.
Okay. Thank you for, first of all, I think this is an important item to be dealt with. I've actually had people come to me, I didn't take the representation, but come to me with this exact issue. I want to have food trucks on my property, how do I do it? And it's very confusing because there's always got to be there's two elements here. There's the land, and then there's the transient person. The food truck, by definition, doesn't have the land. They show up and then they leave. So, like, what I was asked is, I have a piece of property, I'm not doing anything with it, but it's got a parking lot, I want to have some food trucks there like they do in Ferndale or whatever. And so, my question is, the way you've got this postured, do we have the landowner or the land renter has to come and get a special land use, and then, of course, he doesn't really have control over the transients. They get their license from the state, as I understand, and they may have different people come on various days. They might have a parade of different food trucks coming through. So there's two different people that have to be addressed here. So I'd like you to explain what the legislative scheme here is, how you're going to deal with both these. The person who wants to have the food trucks there has to go first, I take it. They have to get a permit of some type.
Well, right now, we allow transient merchants in those zoning districts I indicated, neighborhood business, general business, as a special land use. And they would come before the planning commission for that special land use approval. Whether it's the vendor, the food truck operator, or the property owner, as you will see in most of your cases, you may have an operator that's a tenant. Obviously, the food truck operator is going to have the permission of the property owner to place their food truck on their property. So as part of their application, we require them now, as a transient merchant, to supply a signature from the property owner that gives them permission. So they then submit a site plan. Again, it can be both or either, but submit a site plan for the site on how they plan on placing the transient merchant operation on that property. They would submit it.
So the transient could do that?
Right. As long as they've,
as long as they have
obviously
permission.
he needs the permission from whether they need a state license for something else or not for their vehicle isn't really we don't get into that. But they would need that special land use approval right now as a transient merchant. And we've had a couple over the years that have made application. The old Ford dealer on Woodward Avenue had one at one point in time, and they were treated as transient merchants. Just like the Christmas tree sales, the flower and fireworks sales, all of those are transient merchants. They're there temporarily, seasonally. They come through and get an approval. What we're doing here is, again, at the request, was to specifically peel out food trucks and let them occur potentially in the CBD.
I think the food trucks are
in
different.
order to do that, we had to define them different than transient merchants because we didn't really want to get into allowing a lot of the other outside stuff to occur in the CBD. So we redefined transient merchant food trucks and outdoor displays.
Let me give you the scenario that was presented to me because I'm not sure if it fits this. So the landowner said, "Boy, I'd like to have food trucks on my property. I know some guys with food trucks, and they know other guys, and so they would like to come, and maybe we could do this." So would each food truck have to get a permit, or can the owner say, "I want to open this to food trucks," and he only gets one, or does everybody have to get one?
Well, I would suggest in that situation where you're dealing with multiple individual operators that the property owner would be the applicant and identify how many food trucks he's going to have, where they're going to be. If you're going to have 5, the city doesn't care which 5 it is, but we would, as part of your submission on your site plan, you're going to identify how many you're having and where they're at. You're going to identify how people get in and get out of the site. You know, if it's a site where they need parking, they're gonna have to show where they're parking for these food trucks. If it's a site that has tables and chairs, they're gonna have to identify where those are at, how they're contained. They're gonna have to deal with the refuse. They're gonna have to submit a complete site plan, and that would identify the number, the location, the size, and then if the planning commission blessed it, doesn't matter to the city whether it's 5 different food truck operators or the same 5 every year. That's not the, all we care about is how it runs, and they're set up the same. So you could do that right now under the transient merchant provisions. It's just limited to the other zoning districts. This, again, at the request, was to add some provision to the CBD to allow them in relation to some restaurants with liquor license that didn't have kitchens.
All right, let me ask you another quick question. If I wanted to have a taco truck come to my parking lot so I could have like a party for clients or something, I would have to get a special land use for that?
Well, if you're only doing it once,
Only doing it once.
you do it as a special event permit through the police department and the clerk's office.
Very good.
This is
Once a year or once
once, generally,
in a lifetime?
no, it could be periodically. You know, it might, you have an annual party. You can do it every year as a special event. But this is more permanent in the sense of every spring you're gonna show up with food trucks, and, or you could leave them there all year round.
Well,
It's
that
more-
wouldn't be the idea, that they wouldn't be left there, at least the guy brought it to me, is that he said, I got a stable of people who might want to use my property, and, you know, they just have to tell me when they're coming.
The transient merchant, the caveat I'd put on it, as we said in here, is you can't take up required parking. So if your normal business needs that parking to run your business, you can't put a food truck and an operation in that required space.
Unless you go for a ZBA to get a variance for your required.
Yeah, but it would
parking
come
space.
here first, and you'd have to give them permission to go get the waiver, that sort of thing, but.
Ms. Douglas?
So what we're saying here is that businesses in the central business district that have a liquor license but no kitchen, but do have land that can accommodate a food truck, can do so. They don't have to worry about parking, because there's no parking.
Under those provisions, again, you would see it as a special land use permit. They'd have the right to apply and ask you for permission to do it under a special land use.
How many establishments are we talking about in the
Well-
CBD that have a liquor license, no kitchen, and enough land to put a food truck on?
2 for sure. Very across
I'm
the
only
street.
thinking, I'm only thinking of one.
3.
Rouge and Motor City.
Potentially 3, potentially,
What about
At least two.
Gasoline Alley, is that still there?
they don't have any land.
So who are we talking about here?
Well, now we're talking about Gasoline Alley, I think. It's there, it's always there. It's been there forever, it always will be.
Well, and whether they got enough land or not, that's why I don't know how to speculate on whether they got enough land or have, I mean, maybe they acquire some land or they've got some land adjacent to them I'm not aware about, but it could be a few. Who doesn't have kitchens? With the liquor licenses, you've got River Rouge Brewery, you've got Motor City Gas. Goes in the Alley, I don't think has a kitchen either really, but I haven't been back in there to see, but they don't have any property unless they, again, did something. I don't know who but those are the ones I would throw out there.
Okay.
Casada.
No,
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Costa.
Just to clarify, let's say Lockhart's wanted to shut down their parking lot in the summer and have a couple barbecue food trucks out there. They would not fall into this under a special land use permit because
No,
they have a kitchen.
they would do it under a special event permit
But that would only be for like one time. They couldn't do it for the whole summer. Okay.
for the weekend, for whatever.
I think, if I may, I'm a little bit confused about the model that the city is looking at. I don't, I see food trucks at concerts. I see them. I can imagine a situation where somebody might say, hey, they're building a big building down there, the Singh property there. I'm going to bring my food truck out there at lunchtime and feed a bunch of construction workers. Can they do that sort of thing?
Why not?
Because we don't allow transient merchants there without a special land use permit.
But they could do it if they came in and got a permit. Would that be through the police department or through?
For you guys.
They'd have
They
to
want
go
it
to
to
Unless it
planning
was a
every day.
special event permit, like if they're having like a construction kickoff day or something, they
If
can
they're
get a
having a
special.
grand opening or groundbreaking, they could do it just
So
like
they
they
could
did
call
out
it,
here.
Construction Workers Unite on a weekly basis and,
No.
no.
Like I said, the one we had at Ford was a everyday occurrence. And
Mayor.
Yeah, what I see here is I see an opportunity. I mean, certainly I think, food trucks are an interesting part of, Americana, both past, present, and probably future. I think that, we have to some extent, have some restrictions and be careful because we don't want a proliferation of food trucks in every corner, especially on parking spots in the central business district. I don't know if you guys have ever been to, I forget the name of the street in DC, but it's like 6,000 of them. I mean, all you do is you smell, this Pangea of food from hamburgers to, Thai food to fried chicken to falafel. And
Sounds
it's-
good right now.
It sounds good, but when you smell it all together, you're kind of like, what's going on here? But I also think there's a need for, some businesses, and it looks like on the 4th Street corridor, this might fit best, that do serve liquor but don't serve food, which, in the benefit of the public health and safety, if some of those businesses picked up on these changes, that might be helpful. And it's a way to kind of introduce, I think, food a little bit in a controlled setting, food trucks, specifically in and around our central business district to see, where it goes, test it out, and if it works out well, at least you have some limitations and controls on it. And then down the road, if it's something that's good for our community, we can, noodle on it and either close it down or open it up a little bit more. So that's the way I read this and see this as being beneficial, these changes.
technically, you still have a public hearing, but
Oh, yeah.
Yes, we do. Let's open the public hearing. Not seeing anybody, we'll close the public hearing. Thank you, Mr. Twain. Mr. Chase?
I was just going through this, and if you say, since we're using the forestry corridor, this allows them to perhaps pull the special event permit, or do they even actually need the special event permit if this gets through into an amended zoning ordinance?
well, separate special event permits from the zoning ordinance. Probably the biggest example is Woodward Dream Cruise. All the businesses along there that put up tents and do something during Woodward Dream Cruise get a special event permit for Woodward Dream Cruise from the police department. Nothing they do complies with the zoning ordinance. That's when you go get a special event permit, is when you want to do something special, one little time, like a grand opening, put a tent in your parking lot, and you go get a special event permit and do it. This provision allows you to do it pretty much if you get an approval when weather permits, or when your plan of operation says you can do it. You don't need a special event permit.
So they just have to come in front of
From the
our
front of the
board?
planning
or-
commission, and then annually, or whatever the transient merchant license is. I don't know if that changed.
The
But,
frequency is up
the
to their own
frequency up to
discretion.
the license, yeah. I mean, like, used to see at the Shell station on Woodward, flowers, pumpkins, things all through the year.
So-
And they had a transient merchant that let them do that as they saw fit.
So technically, it would behoove a business to say, I'm gonna have them, say, twice a month. And then they would have to come in and get the permit, or not the permit, the approval with the plan of operation and the frequency of how many times you're gonna do it, and do that all at once. They couldn't just have it on a Saturday without telling anything. although it is listed in the zoning ordinance. they
We'd
still-
have that discretion to say, well, no, you can't do it 365 days a year. But if they came in and said, hey, we want to do it twice a week from May through August.
Friday, Saturday. Anyways, that was the thought, based on, request.
What kind of action do you need from us tonight? Is there?
Well, there's no
like a
required action.
resolution,
You
or-
held a public hearing. If
Okay.
you're in support of it, have no changes, no comments, we would have normally have a resolution to recommend approval to the city commission, and that is at the bottom of page 2.
What's the pleasure of the commission?
If you wanted to consider it more, we'll put it back on next month. It's up to you what you want to do with it from here. You've held the hearing.
Mr. Casada?
Well, it was a long night, and there was nobody here. I guess it would be interesting to hear from at least a few people who either want food trucks on their property or operate food trucks before we took some action. Maybe I'm dragging my feet, but, I mean, it might be interesting to hear that before we did something.
Mayor?
I know I've heard from a couple.
Have you?
On 4th Street. And I think they're very, I think that was sort of the genesis of this, is that discussion going on between the Restaurant Association, those individuals, and some other folks in town, and, petitioning the city, talking to some of the commissioners. In that 4th Street corridor, I think that's sort of where the genesis of this came, to say, hey, does it make sense? And I think the business owners there agree that they'd like to have and try out, having some food trucks in that area for their patrons. They serve alcohol and they don't serve food. They serve whiskey in one area and nice beer in the other, and, I think if you, that's the feedback I've received from those potential businesses impacted by this ordinance change.
And I can forward it to, the DDA meets next week. I could forward it to them and see if they have input. Could forward it to the chamber and the rest of us. If you want input, I could forward it to all of them and bring it back next month.
I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
Do you need a motion to do that, Tim?
No, I can just do it. If you just want to postpone it till next month, that'll be good.
So moved.
Is there support?
Support.
Any discussion? All those in favor to postpone it to the month of August, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, and then the last item,
The last item, you need to go to the website. I don't know if anybody printed it off, but the 5-year review of the master plan. We added a memo yesterday and added it to the agenda based on the joint meeting you held with the city commission. On 2 occasions, we put this memorandum together outlining, basically from our notes, the direction that the planning division felt both the city commission and the planning commission wanted to go. Given that you and the city commission have passed prior resolutions, the first thing we suggested was to rescind the planning commission's resolution from September 12, 2017. Would be the first course of action. And then second, we drafted a second resolution that would hopefully mirror with what came out of the joint session. And again, if you're not ready to act on this evening, that's fine with me. It's really, if you want to review it more and make sure that what it says is consistent with what you recall, we can hold it over to next month. Procedurally, I wanted to get you as a planning commission to either rescind and then adopt a new resolution and then send that to the city commission for their action. If you adopted this tonight, I would forward it to the city commission for the 23rd for their consideration. So if you wait until August, I'm going to wait until August to get something in front of the city commission.
Ms. Douglas?
I'm sorry, when was this put on the agenda?
yesterday.
Okay, so people who read their packet on Sunday didn't even know this was here.
No.
So I would move to postpone this till next month.
Okay.
I'd like to too. I didn't see it either. So motion,
Moved and supported.
Me,
Ms.
him.
Douglas, supported by, I'm sorry, Mr. Godek, to postpone it. Is there any discussion on that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? So this will be postponed for next month.
To August.
Till August, yes, thank you. Okay, so is there a motion to adjourn?
Oh, yes.
Support.
All those in favor say aye.
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 We are adjourned.